Members, please take their seats. The chair recognizes Councilmember Anthony Phillips.
I'm ready.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Anthony Phillips.
Thank you, Council President. I want to begin by asking, Commissioner Bethel, safe corridors are really essential to preventing incidents like Northeast High School and so forth. What are we going to be doing to beef up on our safe corridors program? Is it possible to also add a police officer, more police officers at every school in the city of Philadelphia so we can keep our young people safe? And also, I just wanted to also ask, in terms of training for our rec centers and so forth, training for our police officers so we could do a better job at recruiting folks from the city of Philadelphia to participate in this, to participate as a police officer. Can we open up our rec centers as a training hub, as well as something where we could teach people to test so that can help us with recruitment? Is there somewhere in the budget that can make that possible so we can increase the number of police officers as well?
Yeah, so thank you for that. So the safe corridors, as you know, has been a significant issue, and it started, safe corridors have been around our school for some time, as you're fully aware. It wasn't during my tenure at school safety where we started to see these incidents where we had shootings come to the doorstep of a school and where we literally had children being shot and killed outside of a school. As a result of that, as you know, we worked while I was at the school district to build these safe corridors, in which we are 23 safe corridors around specific schools run by the school district with community members doing that. Part of what we created from that process were safety zones, but as a result of some of the most recent shootings where we had along our corridors, Commissioner Cram and Commissioner Kelly have worked together to develop an enhanced strategy. You'll see that come out in our 100-day plan where we're moving our operation. We brought in our special operations personnel who normally would not be at schools to supplement our deployment. Not only will they be at schools, but we're going to be trying to work them along our main corridors where our kids are gathering along the roadways. That has not been a dynamic we had to deal with before, but we're trying our best. We do not have the capacity, as you know, to deploy at every school. We have 68 officers. Most of our high schools have coverage by police officers, and then we have another element where they deal with our lower grades as part of our roving patrol. We enhance that with working with the Office of School Safety that has over 300 men and women in school safety who do that interior work. Working collectively, we try to create as much of an umbrella over our kids as possible, but we're in a city of 134 square miles, and when they're moving away from the school now into the corridors, and even out of the corridors, even further away, it creates a challenge for us. As it relates to rec centers and recruitment, I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure. I'll check with our recruitment team to see if they've been in their recruitment. We are enhancing our recruitment process.
Well, the ski mask ban, will that be helpful for you all? Just quick, 20 seconds.
We're going to work with it. I got a package here for you.
Okay.
Really breaking down all of the, Commissioner Healy worked through that process. As you know, we had to go through some training around that, outlined in this packet, and we'll provide that to you. Is the conversation we had. We've gotten, the training bulletin for that to make sure first we have to make sure the officers know how to implement the process, and then to our follow-up to our meeting, we created the signage that you talked about, and Perfect. So we're moving through that process now. I just signed that off this week. And then we'll start to be moving into a process of making sure our men and women know how to use this effectively and as a tool to address the mass in those specific areas that the ordinance allows.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Member Phillips. Has ski mask and mask been a hindrance to the solving of homicides and non-fatal shootings in the city of Philadelphia?
I don't know if we have a specific data, but clearly when they're using masks and even now wearing gloves, is a direct result of them understanding that cameras are all everywhere now. right? Not just our police cameras, but Ring doorbell cameras, private cameras. And so when these individuals decide that they're going to, as the street call it, their ops or whatever they want to call it today in the community, they are using the hoodie, they are using coverage, they are using gloves, they are doing other things to mask the ability. Now, whether we keep a tally, I don't think we keep a specific tally. Yeah, we can find out, but it is definitely a dynamic that has been going on for a period of time. But even despite those barriers, I cannot be more proud of the men and women in homicide and our shooting investigation group, our detectives and our detective division, and the men and women on the ground, the cops. They are doing some incredible things to be able to, because at some point you have to take that mask off, and their ability to track and be able to do certain things just amongst themselves and talking amongst themselves, communicating amongst themselves, we've still been able to get cases done, because at some point you still got to take it off.
Thank you. And for the record, for those who don't know what ops mean, it means the opposition. Just kind of educate some folks that may not be
How do you,
hip to the lingo. Everybody don't know.
I know, I appreciate it.
When you do this work, though, you clearly understand. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just getting back to questions regarding the budget and some of the performance measures here. And I noticed that in the performance measures, I guess the goals is just a reduction from the previous years. So as a council, as a body, who is charged with, distributing funds to reduce these incidents, can you tell us why there aren't any specific numbers, goals that you all have, so we know how to fund certain areas, or where to increase or decrease certain funding for certain areas?
Yeah, you'll see, I'm not sure, you'll start to see as we put out our goals for this year of a 20% reduction in our homicides, our clearance rates. We will be very, very prescriptive of the specific areas that we're going to be looking to reduce the level of violence that we see across the city. I mean, 20% reduction from a 410 homicides from last year, bringing us to about 328. You'll see we also will start to talk about a phase 2 approach of getting us even below 300 back to pre-COVID periods, going back to 2013. We're really going to implement some significant stretch goals for ourselves so we can start to push ourselves to obtain them. And so you'll see as we start to build out our plan, even beyond what is submitted, we're really going to be very, very prescriptive in exactly where our performance goes on all things, not just our deployment and our issues of driving crime down. One of the challenges in policing, and I don't, maybe getting out of turn here, is, homicide has been the barometer we've used to evaluate whether we as a city are doing an effective job anymore. And in January 1st, we go back to 1, as if the 410 people got killed a year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're doing that. Yeah. I'm not saying that for you. I'm just saying overall. And so what we're trying to do is be much more expansive in our goals. Whether it comes to our community partnerships, really setting those levels. And so we will be pushing that out, particularly once we do our 5-year strategic plan, being very, very, defined about what those levels should be.
Yeah, I only asked that because, we're asking for almost a $23 million increase in the police budget. But for me, I want to see, what does that $23 million get us, right? Does that get us a lower, does get us a reduction in burglaries? Does that get us a reduction in violent crime? Does that get us a higher arrest rate, right? What does this $23 million get us? And I think that if we as a council are able to see the specified goals, then we can see if we're putting, our money, good money with good money, or bad money with bad money.
Yeah, I understand that, and I respect that question. But but if I set the goal that I want to treat, victims of homicides families with a respectful and dignified and empathetic way, by instituting victim assistance officers, victim advocates into that space, we can measure that pleasure, because we can survey those families and find out whether what we're doing, that will not oftentimes going to show up in a number those static numbers you described, but they will show up in a different way as we build out our community partnership. We are going to be evaluating our department in different ways now. And on that side of the work, how are we functioning, and what are the satisfactions, survey satisfactions there in that space? Yes, in our technology, we definitely believe that the technology will help us. It is helping us now. I can definitively tell you today, and we can grab you and share with you cases where having technology is helping us to solve our shooting and homicide cases, and that is in our process as well.
Council President, I have one more question that he alluded to. You mentioned crime victims. In my district and throughout the city as a whole, there are family members of homicide victims who feel that police detectives do not engage them enough in the most trying times that they're going through in their life. Can you describe to us how this new office will help kind of, humanize those emotions and feelings that those family members have? They feel like the detectives just don't care.
Listen, myself and Commissioner Stanford, we've been sitting through meetings. I attended a meeting a week ago with Amir up in the Northeast. There were 200 people in that room. We hear them. And that's what I said to him. The mayor has said that before. We hear you. I think we also have to name sometimes some things. A detective who has 20 or 15 cases, we need to sometimes say he does not or she doesn't have the capacity to do what she's being asked to do. And so we also have to humble ourselves sometimes and say we cannot do it. We did not have the capacity to do that. As much effort as they tried, we were not meeting that requirement. And so what the goal is to bring in the victim advocates to help us in that process, to build those. We're going to have a case management process. So when you call into the team of victim, even if I don't have that case, I can go into the case management system and see what's going on to be able to provide those answers. But we also know we have to do some training with our detectives as well, because we found out some things in our conversation that even were happening even before the detective was engaged. How we were even treating them on the scene of a crime scene, where we told them, in one case, we told them to go home after the death of their child and not go to the hospital. And that was done by officers in patrol, and a supervisor did that. So we know we have a problem. We know we're working to address it, and we're going to be working hard to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome, member. The chair recognizes Councilman Maru Landau.
Thank you. Thank you for round two. So 2 questions. I'm going to say them both now because they're interconnected. But the first one is going back to data again, talking about how you're analyzing the data. Who is analyzing the data? Is there a plan? Are you meeting monthly, quarterly? Is it just you? Is it the public safety director's office too? Is it other parts of the administration? What are you doing with all of this data? And then the second question is about your two diversion programs, I guess, PAD and AMP. Can you tell us geographically around the city where you're utilizing the programs, where are they most utilized, and what resources are you connecting folks to? Is it housing, food? What else do you need? And what are you doing to support the PAD program?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do the PAD. So I'm going to have the first deputy do the PAD, but I'll start with part of the work that you will see that me coming back into the police department. You heard Kevin Thomas come up here, who's executive director of Data Value. We have one of the most formidable data centers in the country. That's my opinion. That's my personal opinion. He may be smiling behind me. I hope he is blushing, right? But the reality is that we do. Oftentimes, what we don't do is let the data tell the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. We oftentimes, even though it's answering that question, we go off on this other because it's a nicer fit. And so part of what we're going to do with the data, is really use the data to really focus the work. We have PhD data folks in our house. We have folks with advanced skills. We have analysts in our space, senior analysts, junior analysts. We have analysts on top of analysts now. So we have all of the structure to be able to do a very strategic planning and be able to do that on a regular basis. Clearly in our CompStat model, we bring in the 10 districts that we described earlier, come in every 2 weeks to sit amongst the command staff where we're going through their data to see if they're responding. And we're also talking about their community activity as well. What are you doing in that process? We'll be introducing a 360 CompStat model, which for the first time bring all the other elements that are working in that ecosystem of criminal justice. So it's not just the police department. So when I talk about trying to align our services, GVI will be in there talking about, hey, those 10 areas of your districts you're in that area, what are we doing in that space? L&I, all of those other entities be working in that space. And so we will use that data to create the foundation for the work moving forward. It has been a part of the police department, but we're just really elevating it to another level. I'll let the First Deputy talk about the PAD.
All right, so regarding the police assistant diversion, there have been over 2,000 arrest diversions, 363 social referrals, and the areas in which it has been utilized the most has been in East Division. The 24th District and the 25th District are the two leading districts. It's used across the city, but those are the two that are the most leading districts.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Bass.
Why you say it like that?
Well, all right now. Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of questions. Just in Councilman Jeffrey Young's line of questioning, something dawned on me when you talked about, getting back to families, closing cases, bringing closure, and most importantly, getting bad guys off the street. And so when a detective has a large caseload, is there a ready remedy from the police department? Do they have support personnel that support them, or is it more of like a one person sort of shop?
Yeah, so they work as a team within their squad.
So it's a
In most cases,
team.
they do have a partner that works
Okay.
with them as a part of their partnership. I think the challenge we have is when the numbers go up like they did in 2020 to 2021 to 2020 to 562, where they get their caseload really expands. Yeah.
Okay.
And we made adjustments as added additional staff. One of the things we have now, because of our shooting investigation group, that they're working alongside our homicide team now. So if we start to see a deficit in the staffing, we can now shift. Some of those shooting investigator personnel are being trained,
Okay.
and they're actually working in homicide, supporting some of the cold case activity as well.
I just had a thought around the community outreach workers, and these would be personnel who are not sworn, these are not officers. But could we, and just a thought again, move some workers to assist, support, provide support staff to, detectives and those teams that are working to solve crimes. Maybe that they have a support team under them that can also be working, different angles of a case to try to bring closure, to try to solve it. Because I saw we were hiring 10 community outreach workers, and maybe we could hire additional workers, not taking away from that, but we could hire additional workers that could help provide specific support for the detectives and the teams that are trying to close, I would say, homicides as a priority, because, those families want closure, the folks want closure, and I just, went to a funeral not too long ago for Damian Taylor, 17 years old, killed leaving Imhotep. Last year it was, Devin Whedon, 15 years old, and before that it was Jeremiah Wilcox, 13 years old. And so these families still haven't had any closure, but if we're able to provide another level of support staff, maybe that could be helpful.
Yeah, one of the things that Commissioner Venora is be working on, we're moving away from the term cold case because of the feedback from families about cold case and going to unsolved murders. And so he's working to expand that work now. We're working through that modeling now because coming from many of the families you discussed, said that what's happening with my case and
Right.
what determines as an unsolved case and when does it get to that place. So we're building out the structure now to do exactly what you said, we're moving staff from our shooting investigation group over to our homicide unit to help in that regard and to build that out so we can start to get much more seeped into some of these cases that we oftentimes, because of the number of cases the investigator has, they can't get to.
Thank you. And we know know our detectives are working really hard, but at some point, you know, with a huge number of cases, it becomes very difficult to
Yes,
be
ma'am.
able to drill down and get the results. So, but they're working hard, but, you know, maybe some more support.
No,
But,
your notes are well taken.
yeah.
and-
Thank
and-
you so much.
Yes,
I'll
ma'am.
come back around, Mr. President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things. One, when we look at the scope of what's happening in Philadelphia, what are the percentages of youth that are committing these crimes, A? And then, based on our population, it's my understanding that a small percentage of people are doing the large percentage of the crimes. And how do we articulate that fact that there are more good people than bad? And how do we do that? And then the second question is crime scene cleanups. And how do we, you know, it's hard enough that somebody is a victim. It's harder when you got to walk by that crime scene and there's still remnants of the crime. I'll never forget up 54th and Burke Street, we had, you know, some of that problem. And when people were walking by, because it was evidence, there were shells and there were sneakers. Guy got shot out of his sneakers. So how do we, A, take a look at the reality of the percentage of what's really going on out here? And then how do we kind of paint a better picture that actually Philadelphia is a better place to live, work, and play?
I so appreciate what you're saying, because I think oftentimes we don't give our folks enough credit. You know, you would think that the super predator was broadcast 20 years ago was still around the corner, when we were told that lock up every child and every juvenile because they're going to be the next killer. We found out that was absolutely flawed data, right? Today we know that over the last decade, most of the juvenile violence is around 10 to 11%. We had a little bit of a bump one year, but that's all. That's the wheelhouse of 10% of all of our violence across the city of Philadelphia is related to juveniles. But you would think that when we talk about it, it was the opposite, that 90% of it is juvenile. And so I think part of that is making sure we tell our story, but doing it in a data-informed way. I mean, today we're down almost 40% in juvenile violence under the age of 10 for homicides. So we're down 40% from 10 last year to 6 this year. That's not great. I'm not saying that's good, but that's far cry from where previous years where we're already up to 40-something homicides for juveniles that age. And so I think it's about being really, really informed. And also, as I shared with you, when I shared the earlier data, we got to that 5 zip codes because we started to look at 2,000 students in the school district. Dr. Blasco was doing research around that, of looking at 2,000 students who have been shot or killed, school-age students, that's 22 and under 22, who have been shot and killed or shot someone or killed somebody in the city of Philadelphia. And from that data, they're working backwards now to see where there may be intersecting points of where we could have intervened. But what we can see from that data is that most of our kids are being shot 2 hours after school within 2 miles of school. And so, that's why we have to, again, I'm constantly railing here about being informed by the data so we know where to really be working. So out of school time, we know is so important because we can see the data is important in that regard. I'll turn it over to Fran to talk about the second part of it.
Thank you. And following up on respect to crime scene cleanup, with the help of Director Gear and Managing Director, we've developed a program with the city to do a crime scene cleanup in a public forum. So as that, we'll be able to clean up these crime scenes that you mentioned in a public forum. We have a contractor who's already been assigned or already chosen. The police department's working with that contractor to develop an implementation plan, and that plan's underway as of this month for the training. And it'll start first in the 25th district. We'll see what's, any bumps or anything we encounter, and then from that we'll move it out throughout the city, step by step.
So is that public spaces or private homes, or both?
It does not at this point. No, it'll be a public forum. What happens in the public space?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. I wanted to circle back to an issue that I heard my colleague, Councilmember Bass, speak to earlier today regarding nuisance businesses. We know that when we were doing the nuisance business tours across council districts and working with my district colleagues, L&I had noted that some of the code inspectors would only go out to enforce against nuisance businesses when PPD is able to provide officer support. And I know this is an issue that we work very closely with Commissioner Healy on as well with the Nuisance Business Task Force. And so my question is, if you could just detail for the record the nuisance business process and how you all are interfacing with L&I under the new structure of L&I, and then how does PPD support captains in their work to address nuisance businesses that are brought to their attention? Like, what is that interface?
First and foremost, we've had a long-term relationship with L&I Health, State Police, Liquor Control Enforcement, through the Law Department. At that time, it was Kristen Bray, and who I see will still oversee the nuisance committee for the city. So with respect to the nuisance, the coordination with the inspectors, that's always been done. We had Inspector Bob Ritchie, who was formerly of the nuisance unit, would coordinate, reach out to L&I whenever they needed assistance, as well as health when they're going out and doing paraphernalia inspections. We've always coordinated with the district, with the nuisance unit, but also that unit only has a handful of people, but they coordinate, there's a synergy. They reach out to the district and get the required officers. So they do that routinely. So if L&I or health are going to go out there, they reach out to our nuisance unit, and we're happy to help accommodate whatever officers they need.
Well, I guess part of my question is, under the new structure, I'll give you an example. We were on a tour, I think it was in the 5th Council District, maybe 2 years ago. And we happened upon a location that not only had an issue relative to being a nuisance business, but they also had additional safety issues for the actual building. So under the new structure, who and how are we working with L&I to ensure that we are able to capture all of that?
On those walk-arounds or walkabouts, as we would call them, that's part
Right.
of the standard operating procedure of the nuisance unit. And in doing so, they include L&I in that process. So what they would see in there, L&I would be able to see or whatever, but we also document everything with body camera. So we actually share any body cameras of any information that they would need for their purposes, we share constantly. So that's actually works very, very well.
Okay. And so I know that we work together very closely with you all, Nuisance Business Task Force. I just wanted to make sure that under the new structure that we have the ability to speak with both sides of L&I to address both a nuisance business issue as well as safety issues for actual locations.
Well, I mean, the breakup of L&I is kind of brand new,
Okay.
but we have relationships with both commissioners. So it's not like it's going to be an impediment in any way. And also, I mean, for the Kristen Bray with the Philly Stat 360 will be coordinating everything to make sure,
Okay.
as well as that we're all on the same page. So, but we've had no problems, and I foresee no problems with the commissioners that we've dealt with in the past.
Okay, that'll be great. And I heard the bell, I want to honor the clock, but really quickly, I just want to get this on the record because we've received about 4 constituent cases over the past 2 weeks on this one issue, abandoned vehicle complaints. And so if we could just get an update on the neighborhood services unit, and if there's any backlog, and if it is, what we need to do to resolve it. And then finally, I'll submit this to the council president, but if we're looking at a civilian position for the young people who are part of the Explorers, so that we can then get them into the pipeline to apply for PPD.
So as it relates to the abandoned autos, you will find, obviously that was part of the mayor's executive order as well. To date, we've had 6,300 complaints come in year to date. Of that, those 1,175 were written, 872 were towed. We are on average towing around 150 cars a week for approximately 600 a month. However, we are we ramping up those efforts through some working with our partners at the Philadelphia Parking Authority, Bridge Laser and their team. They were trained to be able to write take it right through the write-ups now as well, which is significant. We're using I forget the name of the Public Safety Enforcement team They are working in our neighborhood service as well to help us that. So, and that what we've done and what I'm really good, the team has done, has been able to train men and women across the police department. So even though we went to originally a centralized process, we're having a centralized, but we're also decentralizing it now. So we have officers out in every district who can write those tickets. We were doing 2 sweeps a month. We're expanding it now to 3 sweeps a month, working with our partners, our vendors, to do everything possible to increase those numbers. That was part of our charge from the mayor and part of what we're going to execute on. And we're going to be working diligently to increase those numbers of what we've been able to do previously. They've done a yeoman's job with their numbers being down, but we're now coming up with other ways to be able to continue that work in a more effective way.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. And also, Commissioner, she just wants you to make sure you provide information regarding how young people can enjoy the Explorers program as a pipeline to
I apologize,
Philadelphia
yes.
Police Department, correct?
Yeah, the in-between. So once they're finished Explorers, but before they're able to apply for employment as a police officer.
Yeah, we're working through a cadet program now to use that exact model that you're describing for that bridge to get them to 20.3, I think we're at now, because they have to be 21. But we recognize if they're 20.3 when they come in the academy and in the academy for 20 years of age,
Right.
they're going to be 21 by the time they come out.
Right.
So that just made good sense because they're in the academy 9 months. But we are working, Commissioner Dow is working through that process to developing that to exactly what you described. We think that's a great opportunity to create that bridge for our young people.
Agreed. Thank
Thank
you. Thank you,
You're
Council
welcome.
President.
Thank you. Councilmember Harity.
I'm sorry, Council President. I have no questions. Next round.
Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Just following up on recruiting, quick question. You said that there was a success rate of your cadets who were reapplying, 70% with reading when they got help, and 20% in the physical fitness area, I believe you said. I just wondered if you had a formal process for those who didn't make it the first time, if there was an actual program they went into to remedy, or is this sort of, they ask for the help and you give it, or is there a process for those who don't make it the first time?
There is,
Yes, so they have guides to help with the testing for the reading test. So, and they offer help to go through it. And then for the physical, they have twice a week. They meet to do all the different requirements, and everyone who wants to is welcome to join to get up to the standard to get in.
Oh, good, thank you. That's all, Council President.
And I mean, Madam, and you're also aware that the standard for them coming in for the physical was lowered as well. I know we've talked about, so that is increasing the number of individuals who come. They have to test out of the academy under the standard of NPO certification, but and that's where I think I mentioned went from 36% to 50% success rate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Ketty Lozada.
Thank you, Council President. We've heard today about shootings in the city of Philadelphia, and oftentimes when we're talking about shootings, we talk a lot about the victim, the residents. But as we all know, these types of incidents impact the perpetrator and the victim, or it impacts multiple families. What is the department doing to improve morale or police self-care when they have been the victim? I have been in contact with many families whose family members are police officers, and they are a victim, and they see their family member deteriorating as a result of the incident that occurred. That also impacts how residents, or if residents want to be a part of the workforce, right? The police department. Share with us what the department is doing in order to improve police morale, to encourage police self-care.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that question. I mean, we have to name what you just described. It is hard. When you come into an organization that for some period of time, if you've been heard that we don't want you, defund you, that you shouldn't be in this space, that, and many of the men and women have internalized that, and I can sit here and tell you that we have our issues. I'm never going to be the one to tell you don't, but the majority of my men and women get up every day like I do, born and raised in these communities and working in these communities. And so part of it starts with the leadership, right? I mean, the mayor coming in openly support the work that we're doing, council supporting us in the work we're doing by acknowledging that in our space, understanding that many of the men and women do feel like they were devalued and marginalized in this space. And so that's not going to happen over time. It's what we do, not what we say. And I know the mayor always says that, right? And so part of the work that I have done is traveling around the city, talking to them. What are the issues and concerns that they have, being a voice for them. I work for the Philadelphia Police Department. That is my job, to champion them, work with them, and build them back up. And I know my colleagues here at the table have done that. And so we really have, but we also have to get our best self back to policing too, right? We gotta get away from what you can do and what you can do, and so that they feel like they're valued in the work that they do. But that's not gonna happen overnight. But I think this slow, incremental process, Councilwoman Gautier just recognized my men and women in this council here most recently. That works. And recognizing that their work has value. Their work has value in this space. And we need to name that. And so I think as we go through that process, they hear us talking about them. They see that, guess what, in the budget, you're thinking about them. When they see in my other budget, just a record management system where they don't have to do paper will help move their morale along. And so I think it'll be a combination of all of that as we go through this process, because they are the fuel. And if their morale is low, you know this, and that's why I so appreciate that you get into our space. The more we build them up, the more we will get all those things that you're asking me to do as an organization will get done, because they feel invigorated by doing that. And so that's the work that I'm embarking on. That's the work my team is embarking on. And that's the work we're going to continue to do and get to a place where it'll come up. If they're listening to me, I'm going to work my behind off to get it up. That's for sure.
Thank you for that.
Thank
Earlier
you.
this year-
That's
I'm sorry.
Bill. That's Bill. That's okay. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jamie Gaudier, and we're doing 2 rounds because we still have 3 departments we have to get through the rest of this afternoon. Councilman Jamie Gaudier.
Thank you, Council President. Commissioner, on day 1 of her administration, Mayor Parker signed an order declaring a public safety emergency. I'm sure you've been giving us details throughout, but can you more clearly define how this executive order is showing up in and impacting PPD's efforts to address violence in the city?
Yeah, so what you'll see, Councilwoman, is that as we move out and we launch our plan, I mean, many of the things I talked about here around around violence, you'll see us have a kind of a smart policing, the things I described here, really focus on those areas where we have crime, directing our personnel to those areas. You'll see us then walk incrementally through our plan around ATVs. You will definitely see an enhanced presence of activity. We are already expanding beyond. We're almost at our numbers that we had all of last year. So we've already begun that process, working around our car meetups. As part of that, you will see us start to lean into our retail theft model and really looking at the prolific offenders as we go through this work, and our quality of life work around abandoned autos, et cetera. And then we will again move through our work in Kensington and the efforts underway. And so you'll see it'll be very clear, I mean, that of the things that we're going to do. I don't want to get ahead of, I submit my plan to the mayor, and then she will present it to the public. But I hope that the council is pleased that we have really taken what your constituents has asked us to do, what the mayor has directed us to do, and put that into a document so you see some core action steps with the understanding that it's part of a 5-year plan.
Thank you for that. Sorry. I am so excited that the Juvenile Assessment Center was launched at the beginning of this year. I had the opportunity to tour the center and want to shout out Lisa Varon and Faith Harris for their tremendous work. For those who don't know, the JAC is a place where juvenile arrests are processed by specially trained civilian staff. Instead of going to an adult facility, young people can connect with a social worker while they wait, and the staff are also trained to reach out to family members and enlist them in helping young people to correct their behavior. The center allows police officers to return to patrol sooner as the staff at the center complete the processing that would typically take up a sworn officer's time. Besides shouting out how happy I am about this new initiative, I wanted to ask about their current budget and what is planned for them in the 5-year plan. And how do you envision this center growing in their support of PPD and young people in the city?
So, Councilwoman, I'm going to be respectful in my response, but I also want to be somewhat direct, and I know Adam Gear is here as well. You know, for the last 7 years, I spent traveling around the country looking at juvenile justice and where the role and responsibilities are. And juvenile assessment centers, though they were kind of some place that people wanted to everybody wanted one. And I'm not saying that's the case here, but sometimes we start down these paths. I've met with Adam and his team to talk about the JAC. Right now, I commit $4.2 million in staffing, so even though it says it's not sworn, I have sworn officers in there. Okay. And so I'm running, for all intents and purposes, a detention center. However you want to frame it, they are enclosed, they are there, and my officers are in there with no weapons. They take off their guns, and they walk into that space to the tune of $4.2 million. And I have almost 26 to 27 sworn personnel in that space. I say that I fully believe in juvenile justice. As I talk to the assessment team, what I'm asking them to do is to evolve. Most of the children, 405 juveniles have been taken to the center. Only 35 of them have been diverted. So that's almost like 8% of all the kids that are coming there. And most of them, Councilwoman, are coming for retail theft. Retail theft, I should be doing, my model will move it to the front line. The men and women in the field in every district across the city should be diverting children from custody without putting them through the trauma of being arrested in far northeast, transported all the way down to the Parkway to be processed in the Parkway, only to be sent them back to their area of service. I believe that the point of contact, that police officer makes that diversion at the point of contact. And that eliminates any of the trauma that we're trying to inflict on a child. And so I believe the umbrella of the JAC is absolutely critical. I believe the people in the work that they're doing phenomenal work. What we want to do is now move it to a much larger model where it's this thing where those families can follow up with families when we divert, call those families and work with them, go out into the field and be able to support them and be a part of something much, much bigger in juvenile justice. My goal is to make the Philadelphia's juvenile diversion and assessment one of the top in the nation. And I think we can do it. And so the construct and the people there, I think, are accurate. I think the way we are deploying and the way we're operationalizing it needs to change. I'll be more than glad to sit down and talk to you more visual. But I love those people you just described. Make that clear. I've talked to Adam Gear. I love the work that they're doing. I think we just don't have to have it in a secure setting to absolutely do that. I think we can do that out in the field.
Is the JAC, I know you're saying we're creating a larger effort, but is the JAC also included in that effort in the 5-year plan?
Yes, they have been invited. The committee that I created, I invited all of the individuals from the Juvenile Assessment Center, as well as Adam's personnel as well, to talk about that in the conversation on how we frame this differently. I don't get a benefit, and I grab a child, and I have the opportunity in the school district when I was there to turn that child right back into the school with no trauma and get them supports. Today, I get none of that. I'm the Grim Reaper. The cop locks them up, brings them to a detention center. My cop's in there, process them. I want a piece of that. I want the officers on the front line to be able to do diversion at the point of contact, be able to talk to those families, provide those, and then the JAC is that entity that we send that diversion to them, and they can do that diversion, but not in a confined setting and in that kind of structure that we have set up today.
Thank you. Council President, can I just ask that we get that information on how that is changing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can you please provide that information to the chair, and I'll provide it to my colleagues?
On what we're building? Or
How is the JAC changing, and how will it fit into this broader effort of diversion at
Absolutely.
First Contact?
Absolutely.
And what will that look like?
Absolutely. And we're still building that, but I can give you the construct of what it's going to be.
Thank you.
We're meeting, yes.
Wish you was around when I was a juvenile. I remember that cheese sandwich and that cold tea, iced tea.
See, the fact that you know about the cheese sandwich.
I remember. I'm vegan now. Hopefully y'all got something different. Let me stop.
We got a little ham.
No. Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. Thank you and your team for your testimony. We appreciate your hard work and your dedication, and we look forward to working with you as we move forward. And so, with that being said, we will move on to our next set of departments, which are the following: Department of Prisons, the Fire Department, and License and Inspections. And so we'll ask for the Fire Department and Prisons to come up together. And members can ask questions simultaneously as you see fit for these two departments, as they are both aligned.
Kept it nice and warm, man. This seat's hotter than mine. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council President and Council.
Could you just state your name and title for the record, and please begin your testimony?
Yes. Good afternoon, President Johnson and members of City Council. I am Xavier Buford, Deputy Commissioner of the Prisons. Joining me today are Chief of Staff Greg Grotto, Chief of Medical Services Dr. Bruce Herdman, and my Chief Fiscal Officer, Ms. Nakisha Hadi. I am pleased to provide my testimony today on the prisons for the fiscal year 2025 operating budget. The Prisons Department provides a secure correctional environment to detain persons accused or convicted of illegal acts and prepares them for re-entry into society in a clean, lawful, humane, and safe environment. The PDP offers job training, educational services, parenting classes, substance abuse services, medical services, and behavioral health therapy, along with counseling. The plans for the fiscal year 2025, the PDP will continue to work in partnership with the Office of Reentry Partners to foster pre-release engagement and post-release services to support a successful reentry. The Office of Reentry Partnerships, which is partially funded by the PDP, serves as the city's lead agency to work with private and public service providers and city departments to serve people released from custody. PDP continues its partnerships with the ORP so that we can connect those persons leaving the PDP and individuals with the Office of Reentry Partnerships. The PDP will continue to provide services, programmings to individuals with substance use disorder, mental and behavioral health care needs, and its literacy needs. PDP provides treatment for medically vulnerable and underserved individuals during incarceration and preparation for their release to their community for post-release care and the continuation of literacy programs. The PDP is a 24-hour-a-day carceral operation which requires continuous staffing and routine emergency upgrades to modernize our infrastructure to its aging facilities and equipment. PDP continues to address staffing challenges in collaboration with the city's Central Office of Human Resources to attract candidates to fill our vacancies. PDP has been severely impacted by attrition, mirroring nationwide trends in corrections, reflecting on a competitive labor market. The PDP will continue its aggressive hiring efforts to fill these vacancies in efforts to increase retention and a significant component of the PDP's spending is for salaries dedicated to the city's employees and staffing of the facilities, and for the contracted medical, behavioral health, food, and maintenance workers who provide critical professional services in support of the incarcerated population. PDP's budget supports required services for the incarcerated population and aligns with its operational goals of providing food, medical care, security, and support services, while also ensuring maintenance of its facilities. PDP does all of this while pursuing the resumption of a full post-pandemic plan. Our plans, some of our point plans for fiscal 2025 and beyond are broad-based, consider most areas throughout the prison department, and support our primary goals. Some include, we average housing 4,600 to 5,000 incarcerated persons daily, ensuring meals, educational programs, medical services are completed as prescribed, while working with criminal justice partners to try and help reduce, where possible, the number of individuals incarcerated in our facilities. We continue to provide medications for opiate use disorder to all opioid-addicted incarcerated individuals. This plan used to be called MAT. It's now been changed to MOOD, M-O-U-D. We continue to link all of our MOOD patients with community MOOD providers upon release. We continue to refer post-release appointments for the chronically ill, sentenced individuals with community providers. We use our Class 100 funding to fill the vacancies and reduce our overtime costs. And with that being said, I will take any questions from the council.
Thank you very much. One, I want to thank you and your team for your service. You too, as Philadelphia police officers. People really may not recognize it, but it's not guaranteed when y'all go to work that y'all have that opportunity to come home to your family. So I just want to personally say thank you. And I've been doing this work for a while as a public safety advocate, from visiting the prisons on State Road to recently going up to Phoenix about 2 months ago to work with the prisoners across the state. And so I definitely recognize that the work that y'all are doing is very, very beneficial to the work of public safety. So just wanted to publicly acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Now, we know that we're in a transition with Philadelphia prisons. A new leader has been picked. So a lot of these questions will be based upon an old regime, but nevertheless, still we have to ask these questions as we go through the budget process. So I know recently a civil rights group alleged that the jail conditions were unconstitutional and were violating the civil rights of prisoners on State Road. And so just give us an idea of the lawsuit, the following of the guidelines that the judge said that Philadelphia prisons should have to follow, and does staffing play a role in that process? Because I know we've had some folks escape. We've seen a couple people get murdered. This is recently, right?
Yes.
And so give us an idea, and it's kind of unfair to ask you, but nevertheless, still, like, what's the strategy moving forward so folks can feel, because even me, and I'm from South Philly, right? And I'm a different type of elected official because I like been there, done that. But when I'm a dad now, right? With 2 kids. And so when I'm seeing folks like escape, I'm kind of like, hold up, right? Like, it's a different feeling as a dad and as a husband, right? There's somebody on a run. I think we had like 2 or 3 cases where, that type of situation has taken place. Some may be on State Road. I know a couple. One was like Chester, so to speak, and somebody going to the hospital, but these guys were in the land. But what's the strategy in terms of moving forward? Now, are we also still making sure that if individuals are in our prison system, their rights aren't being violated because they still human beings and they still have a constitutional right to be treated as such?
So The strategy moving forward is to continue to staff up, to get the jails back to pre-pandemic levels, so we can have that operational staffing that is needed. But in the meantime, what we have done and what we continue to do is we open the jails according to the staffing that is available to us. So I'll give you a good example. We don't open the full housing areas at one time if there's only one officer available. We do it in a tiered method. So we may open the bottom tier in the morning, let them get 4 to 5 hours of activity, whatever the activity is for that day, and then in the evening, we'll put the bottom tier in and then open the top tier. This does two things for us. One, this allows that particular housing area to at least get the exercise, speak to their family, go on their visits, do everything they need to do in a controlled manner, but also try not to overwhelm the one officer that is on that housing area, which can easily happen with everything else that goes on. We don't operate in an office setting, and we don't have the luxury of closing down areas because we are humans watching humans. So that is what goes on, but that's how we do it daily. The main thing is to staff up. Continue with our blitz that we have. Right now we have the buses. I don't know if you've seen them, but we have SEPTA advertisement going on all platforms. We have radio advertisement going on. We're hitting job fairs. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we can staff up, because staffing is the key to this whole thing. The incidents that happen, some I can talk about, some I can't talk about because they're active investigations. But the incidents that do happen, we make sure that we investigate to see what went wrong. Because at the end of the day, if we make sure that doors are secured, outer areas are secured, these things still should not happen. So we look at that also. But the key to your question is staffing, and that's how we address it daily.
Perhaps working in partnership with members of council as a part of your recruitment strategy, because we're on the ground day in and day out, working with our constituents. And again, we're the #1 big city when it comes to poverty, which means everybody can use, this is a good paying job, right? So maybe incorporating us into that strategy can also go on a long way to helping you staff up. When you talk about the issue of drug addiction and opioid use, as well as K2, right? Just elaborate on how you address that behind the prison walls, and particularly the K2 as well.
So the first thing, we don't call it K2 unless we actually capture it and get it tested. We do call it some type of substance. It can be anything, right? But how we deal with that, the first thing we tell the officers is if you smell something, say something right away. Then we would try to get our search teams together. We try to get our search teams. Our first search team consists of our K9 units. The K9s actually go inside the facility, look around, see what they can find, what they can smell out, and what we can capture. We still conduct searches in all of our facilities, be it our big, what we call shakedown teams, or our smaller intelligence gathering teams, in which case we gather intelligence and we go to a certain area where we think there may be contraband. The smell of any smoke odor, or our facilities have what is called an air exchange procedure. So when the smell in the area is alerted, the maintenance team can actually activate that air exchange. Now, it doesn't just pull bad air out right away. It takes some time to do it, but it is one of our mechanisms. The key to stopping any type of contraband coming into the facility is trying to stop it at the source.
And my last question before I turn over to my members, I did a lot of work with a gentleman named Wilfredo Rojas with the Philadelphia prison system for some time. And I think we don't highlight enough some of the programming that takes place on State Road to rehabilitate individuals while they're there on a short period. One program that I participated in with juveniles on State Road with Dr. Dorothy Johnson Spite and Mothers in Charge called Thinking for a Change, which was a great program. And another program I participated in is with the inmates. They raised the pit bulls.
New Leash on Life.
New Leash on Life, and had a chance to come and participate in that program. And so just give us an idea of, because we can talk about a million things that's going wrong, and I get that, and that should be held accountable. But also, let's talk about the programs that are available, that we're trying to get people on the right track so they can come home and be productive members of society as we address the recidivism of inmates going in and out.
So the last one that you spoke of, New Leash on Life, that is the dog program. That has really, really picked up. I mean, we keep that program running continuously. And the guys and gals that participate in that, once they successfully participate in that, they're released within, I believe it's 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks after that, they're released, and they've been picked up by some of the professions, ACT, ACCT, SPCA. So they really, really engage in that. Thinking for a Change is returning. That is a program that is returning. A lot of the programs, what happened, during COVID, we lost them, and now we're trying to get them all back. JEVS is returning. JEVS will be returning, and that is a good educational and vocational program for different platforms. We have moms for the female population. That is a program for them, and it's a doula type of situation. So we're starting to bring.
You said a doula type situation, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson? You said a doula type situation?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so these programs are slowly coming back, post-COVID. So one of the things we're also looking to get back is our skill center. So our skill center was a program where we had electrical, carpentry, plumbing, those trades that guys and gals could pick up. And when they leave under our care, some of that work they could either latch on with a company or, go into business for themselves as a plumber, electrician, things like that. So we're trying to bring the skill centers back.
I think that's great. A lot of times when we talk about the prison system and inmates, it's just important to figure out how we invest in people so when they come back out on the streets. For me, reentry starts behind the walls, not when they come home, right? And the more that we can really show young people, or people in general, there's another path while they're trying to get themselves together, or whatever mistakes they may have made, but there's another path, there's another option other than what they've always known that goes a long way to addressing the recidivism that we've seen day in and day out. And so with that, I'm going to relax to the members. And next is Jeffrey J. Oh, he's not here. Councilmember Jim Harity.
My questions are actually for the fire department.
Okay.
Do you want to hold off?
Yeah, I'm going to hold off, and we'll wrap up so he can give his official presentation. Excuse me, I know I mentioned that early on, but let him give, the fire department give his presentation, and then we can simultaneously do both. Matter of fact, go ahead and do your opening, and then we can go ahead and take that question.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, President Johnson and members of City Council. I am Acting Fire Commissioner Craig Murphy, a lifelong citizen of the City of Philadelphia. Joining me today are Deputy Commissioner Anthony Huggins.
Excuse me 1 second, if y'all don't mind. Just a little protocol. Could the two of you move over a little bit and let the commissioner sit at the table?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, please begin your testimony.
Joining me today are Deputy Commissioner Anthony Hudgens and Deputy Commissioner Mark McCall. We humbly and honorably represent the 3,200 members of the Philadelphia Fire Department, and we are pleased to provide testimony on the Fire Department's fiscal year 2025 operating budget. The mission of the Philadelphia Fire Department serves the public by providing comprehensive all-hazard prevention, risk reduction, and emergency response, while also working to ensure the health and safety of the Philadelphia Fire Department's members and support the mayor's goal of building mutual trust and safety in Philadelphia neighborhoods. And also, the mayor's promise for a safer, cleaner, greener city with access to economic opportunity for all. Our plans for fiscal year 2025 are as follows. To reopen Engine 6, Port Richmond, using FEMA grant funds after the Department of Public Property completes all necessary station repairs and renovations. To replace all self-contained breathing apparatuses, which will soon be considered obsolete according to standards set by the National Fire Protection Association. Self-contained breathing apparatuses enable firefighters and medics to breathe safely in dangerous environments. To continue the cycle of hiring a new class of firefighter EMTs every 6 to 9 months. To place into service a new donated dock for Marine Unit 2 to enable safer access to the fireboat moored on the Schuylkill River near Passyunk Avenue. The installation is anticipated in 2024. To implement the use of new personal accountability devices for all uniformed members. These devices enable incident commanders to digitally track the location of fire department responders at an emergency scene. To train 2,600 firefighters to use the newly purchased personal escape systems, life-saving equipment that enables them to escape structures that have become too dangerous to inhabit. To complete the replacement of computer-aided dispatch system, the CAD, in cooperation with the police department, the Office of Innovation and Technology, and external consultants. To fulfill all 311 requests for free smoke alarm installations. To work with the Office of Human Resources and Fire Human Resources and Recruitment Unit to analyze the results of the 2023 firefighter exam and to improve content and user experience on the next exam in calendar year 2025. To prepare for the biennial hiring announcement of EMT positions anticipated in the summer, fall of 2024, and to test and purchase new bunker gears. The proposed budget includes $963,270 in Class 100, a $22 million increase over fiscal year 24. This funding provides IAF Local 22 members with the bonuses and salary raises required by their contract extension. $13,793,352 in Class 200, a $1,507,377 decrease from fiscal year 24. This represents the net change between the $2.76 million reduction due to the one-time purchase of EMS hardware in fiscal year 24 through the department's billing and collections contract. The $1.25 million increase in 2025 for additional bunker gear, cleaning, and smoke alarm costs. $20,774,691 in Class 3 and 400, a $6,782,161 increase over fiscal year 24. This funding increase will be used to replace the soon-to-be obsolete self-contained breathing apparatuses, which enables firefighters to breathe in and medics to breathe in dangerous environments. And $8,296,986 in Class 800, a $1 million $110,686 increase over fiscal year '24. This funding supports access to and maintenance of fire hydrants throughout the city. Program-based budgeting, the Fire Commissioner's Office. Fiscal year '25 proposed general fund is $1,788,393. The program description is the Fire Commissioner's Office is responsible for overall strategic planning, policy, operations, and communications for the fire department. Our fiscal year '25 strategic goals is to ensure a smooth transition in leadership for the new fire commissioner and to continue to seek grant opportunities to support operations and strategic initiatives. Operations. Fiscal year '25 proposed general fund, $393,453,079. The operations program is responsible for the daily staffing of the PFD's fire suppression and emergency medical services companies. It oversees aircraft rescue and firefighting unit at the Philadelphia International Airport, hazardous materials response, special operations, marine operations, and Pennsylvania Task Force 1, the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Team, sponsored by the Philadelphia Fire Department. Its fiscal year '25 strategic goals include, again, reopening Engine 6 in Port Richmond using FEMA grant funding, collaborating and cooperating with our Department of Public Property partners to create guidelines and implement the use of drones in fire investigation and special operations, and to continue the cycle of hiring new firefighters, EMTs, every 6 to 9 months. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions you have, President.
And again, thank you, Commissioner, for you and your team's hard work and dedication as public safety servants. We know also you're not guaranteed to come home based upon the services that you're doing. And most importantly, risking your lives every single day. In the spirit of my large brother, Commissioner Harold B. Hairston, former fire commissioner of the city of Philadelphia, good guy. We always commend the work that y'all have done to keep our city safe. And so with that being said, the chair recognizes, and also Lloyd Ayers, another big shoes to fill in the city of Philadelphia. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for testifying. Growing up, my house was always a little funny because my father always seemed to be on the opposite side of my grandfather. My father was a police officer, my grandfather was a firefighter. My grandfather was Navy, my father was Army, if you could see always the opposite. But my questions have to do with the paramedics, and I'm gonna ask them and then you can answer what you can for the sake of time and then just get back to me with the rest. So number one, what is the difference between the BLS, the Basic Life Support Medical Units, and the ALS, Advanced Life Support Medical Units? How many of the ALS medical units are downgraded to BLS units daily on average? Can the department start providing a number of the ALS units that are in service in each council district on a daily basis to see if there are any disparities? And it has been brought to my attention that the department has set the time at 2 p.m. each day as a cutoff time for paramedics to be able to volunteer to fill the open spots in the ALS medical units. Is that true? And if it is true, why so early? Why can't, when shift doesn't actually start till 8 p.m. for the night shift?
I appreciate your question, Council Member. I'm going to let our Chief of EMS, our Deputy Commissioner for EMS, answer your questions.
Thank you, Council Member. My name is Martin McCall. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Emergency Medical Services. to the difference between ALS and BLS. Advanced life support is ALS. Basic life support is BLS. Advanced life support has a paramedic engaged in that unit that provides advanced life care for patients that are in extreme conditions. They can do IVs and give medications and things of that nature. Basic life support is just that. EMTs can respond on those units, and they provide basic care, basic airway management, things of that nature to get a person to the hospital when they're in emergency situations.
And I'm sorry, they're restricted on what medications they can do for certain things, right?
Right. Well, paramedics usually we're held to the state protocols that the guidelines there that our medical director oversees and ensures that we are following those guidelines. And there's a medication list that our paramedics can follow. Our EMTs are allowed to assist with certain medications, but not all of them, and they can't give certain medications at all. That's the real significant differences between the two. The hiring of paramedics, I think, was the second question for overtime. Is that?
No, can the department start providing the number of ALS to us that are in any council district on a basis so that we can see where disparities are filling out? So for instance, I had met with a couple of Local 22 guys a while back last year, and they said they were going to check something for me before they left. And before they left, they came back out and they said, well, they know I have a heart condition. So they came up to me and they said, well, listen, Councilman, don't take a heart attack in your neighborhood today, because while you guys have 3 ambulances in activation, none of them actually had a paramedic on it. They all had only EMT firefighters pulling double duty for overtime because we were so short. So that I would just like to see if we can keep track of the numbers that are in each council district, so we know where you guys need to have, more officers or more paramedics on duty. And the other part was what the 2 p.m. Cutoff time for the paramedics to sign up for the people to sign up for an extra shift or whatever it would be. Apparently there's a cutoff at 2 o'clock, but the shift doesn't actually start till 8.
Right. So as far as it's a dynamic system. We're working with our employees who they can determine, they determine if they get ill or they get injured or something, things of that nature happen. So we have to backfill and replace those members, and that's a dynamic, fluid situation. So tracking where those units are in any given particular time as far as what's ALS, what's BLS is really difficult for us to kind of do it over time. But we do allow our members to take the overtime. We open that up early. So overtime is opened. If you're working today, we're hiring for your next days off, which could be 4 days from now. You have the opportunity to get that shift, to work those shifts up to a certain date in which we have to now solidify our quota so we know what we have going on, and we have to cut off at that point. And we try to make that as late as we possibly can. But because of the staffing shortages that we have to turn over to for paramedic EMTs, advanced EMTs, we have to reach over to our suppression firefighter EMTs to help us staff our medic units. To do that, our fire suppression officers need to know what their numbers need to be in order for them to staff what they need to staff. So it's a process, but we try to leave that open as much as we possibly can for our paramedics, EMTs, and advanced EMTs to take the overtime.
Yeah, so it's basically because of the process. Thank you, Council President. I'll save the rest of my questions for next.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. I actually will start with the prisons. My question there was, first of all, thank you for your service. I know you're working under very strained conditions, and let's see how we can get more support for the work you do. Question is, we have a lot of proposed changes coming up in our city as we approach crime, and it seems possible that there'll be increase in your prison population. Might be, we don't know. So while you're already understaffed and there's a lot of lack of services for populations who are incarcerated, just wondering, what kind of strategic plan do you have in place? And are you working in concert with some other departments to look at this potential increase and how we're addressing the issues in Kensington? What is your plan for that?
Yes, so we continue to work with the criminal justice partners, and specifically the courts. We meet with them monthly to talk about the prison pop. It's called the prison pop meeting that we have. And what we try to do there is to look at releases, the low-hanging fruit, what we can get out right away to try to keep the jail population at a standard. That's the base model right now, to meet with them. We also have, we are part of the MacArthur Foundation, and of course that was a grant that was achieved by the city some years ago to help reduce, and it did pre-pandemic, reduce the prison population. So those are the meetings that we have and the discussions that we have. We don't have the luxury, of course, if there is an increase in arrest and detainment, we don't have the luxury of not taking anybody. We have to manage that. And we manage that with the 5 facilities that we have on State Road. So what we always look for is, if we're getting to a point where the bag is getting too full, what can the courts do to help us release some of the people that may be what we call the low-hanging fruit? Some of their crimes may not be where they need to be on State Road. So that is our plan.
And so following up on that, can you describe the retention issues that you face, and what is the main obstacle for prison in terms of recruiting and retaining quality staff?
So corrections across the country is taking a hit. They're taking a hit as far as getting staff in there. It's a different mindset of the workforce today. I mean, what we tried to do, what Philadelphia did, was we changed our model of our staffing. The one thing we did, we onboarded a wellness coordinator last year to try to help with that. We also changed our staffing from a old Price Waterhouse staffing system, in which case the officers were working 6 days straight before they got 2 days off. Now we're on what is called the 223. The 223 is a 12-hour system, but the officers, supervisors only work 2 days on, 2 days off. And they come back, they may be on their 3 days on, and then the following week they're on their 3 days off. This allows them to get 2 weekends a month. The old Price Waterhouse system, it took them 6 weeks before they got a weekend. So those are some of the things that we've done to try to help with the retention portion. There's also been a retention bonus working with Central Office Human Resources. There is a retention bonus that the staff has been receiving. Also, there's a hiring bonus that we put out there for the new cadets. So those are some of the things that we're doing to try to help with retention. But we know we're fighting a hard fight with corrections across the country. Just to give you a good example, the Federal Bureau of Corrections, they need 8,000 across the country officers. So we're all in this fight together.
Well, thank you. I'm going to shift quickly to fire and question about, should I hold it for the next round? Thank you, sir.
We're going to definitely do 2 rounds because we have 2 departments in front of us. Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President, and thank you again to Prisons in her absence. Thank Commissioner Carney for her service during an extremely tumultuous time. I had a few very quick questions for Fire after I asked my 2 questions for Prisons. And so first, I'm very interested in the doulas program that you mentioned. If you could just submit that information to Council President for our review at a later time, that would be helpful. In addition to that, you talked about a number of the inmates who are enrolled in programs and or work assignments and how you all are building that back up or post-COVID. And so if you could submit that information as well. You created a certified barbering program and a CDL license program. Can you quickly talk about that? And then my last question is relative for Prisons, is relative to this issue of releasing inmates at odd times. A lot of stories we've read talked about releasing them like very late at night, really early in the morning, when we know transportation and getting around could be more difficult. And if you could speak to that issue and how you all are seeking to rectify that.
Okay, as far as the releases, we do not have the luxury. The only releases we do not let out past midnight is the female population. We do not release them after midnight. But the other releases, once that bail is paid, we're on a concentrated clock to get them out of there. That is by the courts. We can't hold them. So what we did do, we have a bus service for our late releases that start at 9 p.m. That bus service takes them to 2 different shelters in the city. One is Broad Street Ministries. Dad? Yes, one is Broad Street Ministries, and it's another one that they opt to use that bus service on the late night. Okay. We pay for that.
SEPTA? I apologize for the interruption. Is that SEPTA?
No,
or is it a separate outside?
It is a private bus service that the PDP pays for.
Okay.
And even when they do not use it, we still run that service every night.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then if you could talk about the certified barbering program really quickly. Did you all get that up and running as well as the CDL program?
No, the certified barber, the state did come in and they did an assessment, but they did not we did not finalize that yet, as of yet.
Okay, can you just provide us with additional details in writing regarding that program?
Yes.
Because we have to get more people involved with additional opportunities and pathways to prevent recidivism, okay?
Yes.
All right, very quickly for Fire, while I have a little bit of time, thank you so much, Acting Commissioner Murphy, for all of your work, to your entire department. I see First Deputy Bomer there. Thank you very, very much for your work in helping us with all the service-related funerals that we had to deal with. It was a very taxing time for a number of years during the last term, particularly that Fairmount fire, which was one of the worst funerals I've ever been to in my life. And so I just wanted to say thank you all for how you provide assistance to us as members of council as we work with families and communities to help them during very, very trying times. I also want to say thank you for the smoke detector work we've been able to do together. I want to start there with my question. Where are we with smoke detector requests, particularly as you receive the information from 311? And do we have enough budgeted in this proposed FY25 budget to address any backlog that may exist?
So thank you for your question, Council Member. So the number of requests changes every day. We will make sure we get that information to you as soon as possible. To address whether or not we have enough now, thank you for your contribution of 250 smoke alarms to us. We appreciate that. One part of this budget includes, and it's the first time that I can ever remember a budget line item for smoke alarms.
Right.
In the past, we've asked for funding but it wasn't an actual budget line for each year of the mayor's 5-year plan. So moving forward, we're going to have a budget line and we are going to have enough smoke alarms. As it stands now, we're getting drastically low on smoke alarms. So we're working our best with our nonprofits and our other partners just to see what we can do, because it's gotten that critical. But you know, we're making do by going back to the firehouses that we gave smoke alarms to in the community, and then we have to get them back so we can satisfy some of those 311 requests. Some of the requests come from people in certain, you know, localities, but the 311 requests we try our best to address first.
Well, I hear the bell and I will honor the clock, but I would just request that you all could submit to Council President the amount of requests you receive and break it down by council district so that the district members can understand the requests. In addition to that, the carbon monoxide detectors. And I bring that up because since I've been a member of council, my neighbor had a carbon monoxide issue and the fire department came out and you all were stellar. And then during election, the house next door to me went up in flames. And it was a scary experience, but you all were just stellar again. And so I just want to thank you for your service. Please submit that information to the Council President for our review. Thank you, Council President.
No, thank you. Now I wonder why. I think I asked one time, and they was like, we ain't got that many. And I didn't understand that should be part of the line item. That should just be a part of it. Y'all should not have to go about. So Adam Theo, I see you back there, MDO, watching how things operate from a public safety standpoint. And I'm glad that we're going in a new direction, because you shouldn't have to scramble to get smoke detectors. That's unconscionable. So I'm glad the administration has decided to be proactive around this issue, because if we don't have them, the first thing they're going to protest us to say, well, why y'all ain't give them none? So thank you for your leadership and your team.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Councilman Nick O'Rourke.
Thank you, Council President. I want to focus my first question on the most recent court-appointed monitor report on the Department of Prisons. And hello, Commissioner. The court-appointed monitor report on the Department of Prisons, which was filed less than 2 weeks ago. Because folks around the city have organized around decarceration for years. Sometimes they've been maligned for it. And now a federal monitor is describing decarceration as a key solution to the crisis in our prisons. I want to read a really important quote from page 30 of that report. It says, and I quote, PDP's only conceivable pathways to compliance with the Remick v. Philadelphia settlement remains some combination of population reduction and increased staffing. Absent immediate solutions to PDP's staffing crisis, the city should initiate a coordinated effort among local justice partners to pursue all opportunities for population reduction. I see in PDP's budget that there is a focus on increasing staffing, but what is PDP doing to coordinate population reduction in its facilities?
So the population reduction coordination is, as I stated earlier, with our prison pop meetings. And in those meetings are criminal justice partners from all over. You have the courts, the First District, they're in those meetings. The defenders, private bar, they're in those meetings. MacArthur, the MacArthur team is in those meetings. Some of that is, as I stated earlier, seeing what you can get out of what I like to call the low-hanging fruit, the offenses that are, that do not need to be on state road. Even though those offenses still apply, they may just need home monitoring until their trial or something in that case. That is some of what the monitor is saying. The monitor is just letting everybody know that we can't staff up fast enough. It's not going to happen. So the only way to get this situation under control is a twofold. PDP is to continue its aggressive manner on trying to staff up, but at the same manner, we're asking all of the partners to look at who we can let out of the jails at the same time to try to lower some of this tension.
Thank you for that. I want to pivot to talk more about prison labor in Philadelphia prisons. This was something that was interesting to me when I got after inauguration, we got the office, and I heard from some other folks. The prison labor in Philadelphia prisons is done through Philacor, which includes industries like carpentry, dry cleaning, upholstery, textiles. From our understanding, much of the furniture in our city buildings has come from their labor. How much are we paying incarcerated workers?
The Philacor workers actually get paid by the hour, and if I'm not mistaken, it went up. It's almost, I believe it's 88 cents. Don't quote me, I will get that to you, but I believe it's 88 cents an hour, what they get on their daily work assignment.
And what revenue is generated from Philacor? Do we know?
The revenue offhand, I do not know, but it all goes back to the general fund.
How does it go back into the prisoner programs for reentry? Can you speak to that more specifically?
It doesn't go to the reentry portion of it, but what it does help with, those skills that they pick up, that they learn, they get certificates for that. They also, the supervisors, the industry shop supervisors have ties to the community. So when these guys and gals are getting out, they actually refer them and help them get jobs.
Okay, thank you. PDP is only responding to behavioral health needs within the required time frame 58% of the time, according to what we have. If the current administration's plans to incarcerate people using drugs who refuse treatment is implemented, as I understand it will be, how would you address the complex behavioral health needs of these people, given that you currently aren't meeting minimum behavioral health standards for people currently incarcerated?
Well, I think we are meeting that. I'm going to let Dr. Herdman, who is our Chief Medical Officer, answer that.
Blessings, Doctor.
We, at the moment, during COVID, we had a vacancy rate of about 20%. But our functional vacancy rate on the medical side now is about 5%. So we've been able to make good strides to become more timely. We do have, we're not timely in most of the areas where normally we're 90% meeting our standards. So for example, if somebody came in and they said they had taken psychiatric medications in the community, but hadn't taken them in the last 3 months, we would have them seen the next business day. 90% of the time we're doing that on time. Today it's about 40%. And that's primarily because of, we don't have access to the patients if there are not officers available to make to let the patients out to come to medical services. So our ability to be timely for behavioral health and physical health is dependent on solving the security staffing issue.
Okay. I heard my buzzer, so I'm going to cede my time back to the Council President. And thank you.
You can stretch it, Nick.
Second.
You can stretch it.
I can stretch it? Well, the next questions I actually have were for L and I. Are they going to be a part of this round, or is it?
No, they're going to be in the next round.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, I'll hold it then. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes the gentleman who's trying to build y'all a brand new fire academy, Councilmember Mike Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
And thank you to the men and women of the fire department and the men and women of the prison department that you do such good work. I am keenly interested in both these budgets because the fire academy is in my district and all the prisons are in my district. So first, my question, I guess, to the prison system would be, I will be anxious to get your report that you're going to give to Council President regarding your standard operating procedures for release, for those that are being released by the courts. But I'd also like to see the standard operating procedure for those that have fulfilled their obligations to the Commonwealth. How you release them, when you release them, and what mode of transportation people are leaving the prison. And I highlight that because, sadly, in the last 2 years, we've had at least two prison breaks, maybe 3. And the folks of Holmesburg, who are your neighbors, Tarsdale just above you, Mayfair, are keenly interested, knowing that you have shortages, what safety precautions we can tell them they have in this budget to hopefully assure them that prison breaks are not going to happen in the future. If you could just speak to that briefly.
Yes, I can't speak to the technical, but I can let you know that we have made significant changes and upgrades in the facilities, security, perimeter, upgrades, lighting, stuff like that there to help ease the neighborhood's anxiousness in this situation. We've also changed some of our protocols and strategies about our patrols. So those are some of the changes, but we've made some significant facility upgrades to that fact.
Well, thank you. I guess this one would be for Commissioner Casey. You know, I've been to your academy a few times with your staff, and I know there's this macro initiative to upgrade and or replace the fire academy. Now, I know that that is a big ask, and that's going to take our federal partners, our state partners, our city partners, and maybe some of our philanthropic partners. But I'm anxious to continue that work because I think it's needed. I'm concerned that some of your equipment, you know, the carcinogens, that the cleaning is needed. We want to make sure that you already put your lives in danger going into fires. We don't need you in danger 3 weeks from the fire and 5 years from the fire. You know, please let us know in that budget what, you know, where we can support you on those initiatives. And then more specifically, when I was there, I noticed that during your practice fires, that you have the protective hose line, and then you also have the backup hose line. But yet, when we go back into the real fire situation, we only have the first fire line. Is that something, as your staffing levels go up, is that something that we can put into standard operating procedure in the future?
So thank you for your question, council member. So part of our standard operating procedure is to have a secondary backup line when we have a primary line in service. It's standard procedure on a house fire or an apartment fire to always have a secondary line. Now, what will happen sometimes, what will happen is the companies that respond on a certain incident after the initial fire is put out, and we get down to just making sure the fire doesn't reignite again, what we end up happening is some of the companies end up being released, you know, to get them back into their locals so they can provide, you know, neighborhood fire protection. So when we do that, you may end up with one line and then another charge line like at the door or standing by. But as our training goes at the academy is how we practice, how we play. And how we play is we should always have a secondary line in service when we have a primary line in service.
But that's good to hear, because I'm concerned about that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Rue Landau.
Thank you. I'm going to start with prisons, okay? Thanks. Councilmember O'Rourke took some of my questions because I too am deeply worried about the staffing to inmate ratio and what we're going to do about it. And it seems that, if I'm correct, 90% of the people who are being held have not been tried yet, that we should be looking at who could be the easy releases and just let them out because the ratio is off. But my first question is, in your estimate, how many people can be safely supervised in the jails under the current staffing levels?
right now, we're safely supervising the 4,600 that we have on, up there right now. Again, we do it in a strategic manner, not letting everyone out at the same time based on the staffing that we have. And as we staff up and I'm able to add more officers to those certain housing locations, then I can let all of, like that particular housing area, I can let the whole housing area out once I staff up. But right now, we're managing it that way in a strategic, methodical manner.
Just to be clear, when you say out, are you talking about out of cell time or out of the prison?
Out of cell
Okay,
time, yes.
I got you. And the second question is, I'm finding budget hearings a time that I'm throwing all my ideas out here. But the second question is follow up on Philocor. I think each chair we have at our office costs about $350, but we're only paying the person 88 cents an hour. When we spoke to DHS, they came up with a system for the young people who are aging out of foster care to help them start saving money in an account so that when they're ready to be on their own, they have some money. And I'd love to work with you to start a program where we can pay people more and have them save the money so that when they actually get out, that they can get on their feet and be productive.
And the department is definitely not opposed to that at all. We would love that. And just so you'll know, a lot of the guys and gals, the money that they make during that, some of them do save it up to actually make bail and get out. They do use that. It may take them a little bit.
Ouch.
But they do use that to, yes, to if they don't have any outside help, they do save up their money and make bail.
Think about how quickly they could make bail if we paid them more than 88 cents an hour. So we are going to work on this together. The third thing, also would love to work on you with safe releases at good times that we can get people to safe locations as well. So I'm all in for that. And I'm going to save my last questions because it's a multi-part. I'm going to put that one in writing. And then I have firefighter questions too. Thank you. Can I go ahead with the firefighters? Okay. Does the fire department have firefighting bunker gear that is fitted to more female bodies? I didn't want to phrase it like that. Different size bodies, and if not, can they start?
Thank you for your question, council member. So we've been outfitting female firefighters since 1985, when our first female firefighter came on board. As the industry has changed to accommodate more female firefighters, the way we go about measuring our members has changed. I would have to look into it for you where we stand right now with that, but I would have to look into you to see where we stand now.
So how about glove sizes? You have little glove sizes for giant hands like this one? Little hands?
We do.
Okay. We'd love to have little gloves. We'd love to have gear that fits all body sizes, including small people. And is it possible to provide longer firefighting hoods for members who might have their hair up underneath the hood? Takes it off the neck and leaves the neck unprotected.
That's a great question, and we will look into that. It may be possible. It's not something that we had become an issue until really recently. But yes, we will look into that. So, we do have longer hoods that come down to almost the midsection of the body. Okay. So to answer your first question, yes. Also, and this is just to let you know, we also get smaller size boots also because, women have smaller feet. So we do our best to accommodate that.
Okay. How about, do you, in the fire stations, do you have feminine hygiene product dispensers and receptacles available in the bathrooms?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't know that off the top of my head.
And the last question is, do you have separate bathroom, locker rooms, and bunk rooms for overnight shifts for different genders?
So, as you know how aged our facilities are, and it wasn't again until 1985 that we had our first woman. But as we began to do renovations to our stations, like I just talked a little earlier about Engine 6 being renovated for getting, the company being put back in, we're working with our partners from DPP to make those renovations if we can. Engine 37, for instance, up in Chestnut Hill, we just added an addition to it and we satisfied those. And that's what we'll continue to do, but it's a heavy lift, council member. But we do our best.
Thank you very much, appreciate you.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Ketty Lozada.
Thank you, Council President. My question is for the fire department. When I arrived here 16 months ago, I was approached by a group of firefighters who expressed concern around Directive 58. And Directive 58 apparently is the process that will tell them how to report harassment cases in the department. Many of them were very frustrated because as they reported certain incidents, hostile work environments were created, bullying, retaliation, isolation, and even suicide was a part of the issue. I started to ask questions about Directive 58. I was informed that Directive 58 was updated because it had been outdated for a long time, but that it was updated incorrectly. And that there was no filing process being taught that would go down the line and into the firehouses, right, into the engines. Can you tell me what you all have done over the course of the last year to correct Directive 58? How is Directive 58 dispersed throughout the department? And can you also tell me the number of harassment incidents that have been reported and have yet to be responded to?
So thank you for your question, council member. So I will have to get back to you on the numbers on how many have been reported and how many have been responded to. I can address how we follow up with Directive 58 on getting it out to our membership and making sure our membership understands sexual harassment and the process for EEO complaints. So at the academy level, teamwork, leadership, and communication, TLC we call it, we teach it from the cadet level to the firefighter level, all the way up into our levels. And basically, it touches just on that, on updates to Directive 58. It touches on what resources are available to the members. Sometimes the members aren't comfortable with reporting certain infractions because sometimes the member reporting that infraction might be their superior officer, the person that they're talking about. So Directive 58 does address that there are other agencies to reach out to human resources directly, to reach out to, and human resources can connect them with those agencies that can help them. The biggest piece is, at least the biggest piece that I think of, is how do we make sure that everyone in the fire department understands the message of Directive 58 and reinforcement on Directive 58 and any updates to Directive 58. And the way we do that is by station-wide training. It's every month we come down with station-required training. Some of it's operational, some of it's EMS, but it's always at least 2 directives and 2 operational procedures. 3 directives and 2 operational procedures. And that's how we reinforce to the mass of members that we have that this directive, this policy is being updated and being enforced. And what you should do as, not as the person submitting it, but as the person who needs to follow the rule of Directive 58.
When will Directive 58 be updated appropriately? It's been a year.
I believe it has. It's been a year, you said?
It's been a year.
Gotcha. All right, to answer your question about Directive 58, it has been updated, but the way that we disseminate it to the field has been delayed. So once that's addressed,
Council President, can I ask that a copy of Directive 58 be submitted to us for review? Because as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I have been informed, Directive 58 was updated, but it was not updated appropriately, and it has not been shared down the pipeline where it matters most. And so if we could ask for a copy of Directive 58 so that we can have it reviewed, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Commissioner Murphy, can you provide it to the chair so I can provide it to my members?
Absolutely, we will.
You have a question?
President.
And my next question, thank you. My next question is for the prisons. I understand, I was able to tour your facility when I first arrived here. I learned that 60% of the population is substance abuse dependent. But I was also very frustrated in learning that when your folks are released, they're oftentimes released to follow up with providers in those very same neighborhoods where they can easily have access to narcotics, right? And people who have spent months in prison and who have gotten themselves clean are then referred to providers in neighborhoods where narcotics is easily accessible. Can you please share with me how those providers are selected to become partners of the prison systems? How often are you seeing some of the very same population back in through the system because they have been picked up for doing exactly the same thing, and what can we do differently?
The process is when a person comes in, we try within 4 hours to complete our medical evaluation, which is 120 questions that are administered by a registered nurse. And at that point, many people identify that they're abusing because they're in withdrawal and they want medications for comfort. And so we provide those. Thank you. And then within a couple business days, we meet with them to sit down and help them choose providers in the community that they can go to. These are providers that are largely identified by the Department of Behavioral Health as preferred providers. We have about 50 sites that people can go to across the city. Many of them are federally qualified health centers, and some are specialty substance abuse treatment programs. We also send an electronic referral the next business day to that provider because we don't know when people are being released. As you said, only 93% of people aren't sentenced, so they get released without having much warning. And when they are released, we send a full discharge summary that says, this is the person, this is their diagnosis, these are the medications they have, these are the appointments that they have scheduled for them. This is all with the patient's permission. And we send them with a minimum of 5 days of medication, including Suboxone, which is the primary medication that we're using for treatment of opioid use disorder at the moment. We do entertain adding providers, and if you have concerns about providers, I'd certainly be glad to reconsider whether they should be on our list of people to refer to.
So that we can review who some of those people are, right? And where are they being picked up from in order to prevent them from being connected to providers that will prevent them from having a real opportunity at living a healthy life.
Commissioner Murphy, did you hear the request regarding service providers provided to the chair for members?
I did
You didn't hear it?
I think that was for
Oh, that
president.
was for you.
We-
Okay,
we'll-
that's
we'll
the
provide
prisons.
that.
Are y'all clear with the request?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
I may just add too that we also, unlike almost any jurisdiction in the United States, enroll people in medical assistance. So when a person comes in, we collect the information necessary to do an enrollment with the previous governor. We were able to reduce the application process, so it's fairly simple for people that are in our jail. And if a person leaves with current coverage, we don't have to do anything. If they leave with suspended coverage, we notify the city office for medical assistance, and that coverage is restored within 1 business day, effective the day of release. If they don't have coverage, we submit an application to the same office, and that application is processed within 1 business day, effective the day of release. So the person knows where they're going to go, what they need to, what treatments they need to receive, and has the ability to pay for it.
Just want to follow up on the spirit of Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke line of questioning. Is something that was brought to my attention. So as you go through the model, and we have the comprehensive plan that Adam Thiel was going to put together regarding, and the commission on how we address the opioid crisis and fentanyl in Kensington, right? And you do have individuals who say, you know what, I'm not going into treatment. I'm not going to a triage center, right? So you got to go ahead and just take me wherever you're going to take me. So then you do get an influx of people on State Road who are there based upon their drug addiction. So just talk about the type of services that will be provided for individuals going through withdrawal, individuals who are responding based upon them not having their drug, and then also the process of making them go through that transition from being locked up to actual treatment, even though they didn't pick the treatment in the beginning. You understand where I'm coming from? And I'm sure you deal with that a lot of times now, because I'm sure with retail theft, probably the majority of them that do get locked up is probably drug related. I'm assuming, but I'll talk about just understanding how things work in the streets. A lot of guys get locked up from retail theft based upon their drug habit, wind up in prison, going through withdrawal, things of that sort, right? So how do you help that person get to the transition to help them reclaim their lives from a treatment standpoint?
So, and that's a great question. So during the intake process, when they come in, it's very extensive. It's about 120-something questions that's being asked of them.
That's a lot of questions.
Yes, right? And most people, because by that time, they've been through the police process, now they're making it to us, that pain of withdrawal is starting to kick in. So they're looking for those comfort meds. So the first thing we do is what is called a COWS, Clinical Opioid Withdrawal Scale. The medical clinician will assess the person based off of that scale. And based off of that scale is how they receive the medications to help them with withdrawal. Some folks go cold turkey, don't want anything. We also have our intake process, which in most cases it's almost like a blackout process for 5 days where they're going through the intake process, and that's when they're constantly seeing medical, just in case in that initial intake they didn't disclose that problem, but now it's getting worse and they want to disclose. So that they'll get engaged that way. The programs are there for them from whenever they say something. The mood program that I said earlier, they can get on that, they'll see the clinician will evaluate them and see if they're suitable for that program. That's done right in-house. It's done in-house, it's done daily. So what we try to do is we keep those folks together. This way they're getting that medication together. We try so that it's not passed all over the jail, right? We try to keep those folks together. They get that medication at the same time. And, you know, so when we put them together like that, they're basically programming together in this mood program. As they start to release out, if they're due to get released out, the Yes Care, who is our medical provider, starts that engagement with the community providers that's out there. So now there's a soft handoff. Hey, Joe Blow or Jane Doe is getting ready to get out. They're in our mood program. Here's the soft handoff. When they do come out, they know to come to you. And then that outside provider will then engage them and keep the process going. It is a turnstile system, as we see a lot of times. You know, I'd like to say Philadelphia, how large it is how small it is. This people revolving door coming back, and those things happen. But what we do not do, we don't stop them from getting that service. I don't care if they come back one time or they come back 100 times. If they need to get that clinical opioid withdrawal scale done and they need those comfort meds, we make sure it happens.
Thank you very much. In terms of this round, any other questions on the queue for prisons as well as the fire department? Okay. Councilmember Jim Hardy, then Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Just a little shout out too to Local 22's Executive Board and President Mike Breslin for securing the residency exemption through civil service for new paramedic applicants so that medics from outside the city can be hired. That being said, has the recruitment increased since the requirement for city employees mandated to live in the city's been lifted? How long are the paramedics and EMT applications open, and why can't they be open for longer periods of time?
Thank you for your question, Council Member. I'd like to bring up Deputy Commissioner for EMS, Mark McCall, to answer the question.
Councilmember, thank you for the question. How long is the paramedic test open or list open?
Applications open.
Applications open. Yes, the paramedic application is opened regularly throughout the year. I'm gonna, don't quote me on it, but I think it's every 3 months we open that list up. And we keep it open for a period of time, and then we pull off of that list as we can have a class, and then we open that list up again. So we try to keep that open as frequently as we possibly can.
Okay, and how about the, has recruitment gone up since, or been increased since we took the exemption out, or we gave them the exemption to be able to live out of the city?
Our recruitment efforts continue to be aggressive towards, attracting as many paramedics, EMTs, and advanced EMTs as we possibly can. We have a recruitment team that visits the programs and kind of inform them as to when our lists are open, and as they graduate from the programs, and any other EMTs or paramedics or advanced EMTs that are in the market, we try to capture as much as we can.
Okay. So you're saying 3 months is the period for applications? That's how long the applications stay open at one point?
We open up the applications every 3 months.
Oh,
And that persons that are on that list or get on that list stay on that list for 2 years.
Okay.
So they're on that list, and we try to pull put as many classes as we can. I think over the last few years, we've had a total of 8 between EMT and firefighter and EMS classes. So we try to do as many classes as we possibly can.
Okay, and last budget cycle, there was $10 million put for bonuses for first responders, police, paramedics, and building inspectors, hard to issue. Have any of those bonuses been put out yet? Has there been a system put in place of how that would work?
I'm sorry, Councilman, could you please repeat the question?
We had put $10 million in the last fiscal year's budget, specifically for hiring new recruits, signing bonuses, stuff like that, for police, fire, and L&I inspectors, jobs that we were having a hard time filling. Have you guys seen any of that money yet? Has any bonuses been given out? I know with the police department, they were working out for they had to work out a thing for the officers that have been there long-term. I guess a bump for them also, so it was, fair. Have you guys been able to get any of that money yet to give any kind of bonus to try to get some of these paramedic spots filled yet?
Not that I know of, council member.
Okay, but now so you know, there was $10 million put there specifically for bonuses for first responders and hard to fill positions such as L&I inspectors. So it might pay to look into that, yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. No further questions, Councilman.
Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Just a quick question. The current response time for EMS is currently 10 minutes and 43 seconds, and the target for this fiscal year is under 9 minutes. What's the pathway to achieve this goal?
Thank you, Council Member, for the question. The pathway to achieving the goal is continuing to work with our partners at OHR to hire more people and to keep our medic units, bring more medic units on. We've asked for additional medic units to get into the field. We want to reduce our unit utilization so that our units are available in the areas in which they need to be in, and we've aggressively done that. Try to do that by staffing the units with the call, depending on the calls that are happening in that particular area, so that we don't have units crossing each other to take a particular call.
So strategic deployment
yes.
in addition to increasing your resources. Well, thank you. And another quick question about the Kensington initiative. Is that going to have a public health focus to it? And will it be fully staffed with EMS and fully equipped with Narcan?
So the Kensington initiative is, we have our AR.
So there's a reopening, right, of the Kensington station?
The Kensington? No,
Is that not true?
I'm not aware of
Okay,
that,
so
I'm
we
sorry.
must have, all right, well, thank you.
Yeah,
Well, I'll put this in writing and clarify this.
Okay.
Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jay Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. One question to Fire regarding the application process. You said your application is every 3 months, but given that we have certain shortages, what prohibits this application from being a rolling application?
Thank you for your question, council member. I believe he was talking about for paramedics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
for EMS. For fire suppression, it is a 2-year wait list. It's a 2-year list. Yes, it's a 2-year list that is a rolling. And then at the end of that 2 years, then it starts, the clock starts over again. And then there's a test administered and it lasts the next 2 years. And then there's a rolling. So you can apply during that period.
That's for fire, but again, for EMS, right? What's prohibiting that application from being rolling as well?
I'm going to let Deputy Commissioner McCall answer.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember, the list, we open the application up every 3 months. And a person that is on the list, once they get on the list, they stay on that list for a period of 2 years. And then but if they can continuously apply, until their name is selected. But our paramedics, we usually get to them as quickly as we can. So that list is continuously going.
So if it's continuous, I'm just trying to, I guess for ease for the public, for folks who are trying to apply for these jobs, it should be, in my opinion, I think it should be one standard application process for both fire and EMS, since it's being administered by the same department. If the application for it to be a firefighter is rolling, then I think the application for to be EMS should be rolling as well, to continue to allow more folks to apply all year round if we have a shortage. So my thing is, if we have a shortage in these particular positions, we should not be placing anything in a way that prevents people from applying. Because if after 3 months I may forget, or I may, so we want to encourage people to apply for these jobs, because these are jobs that our city desperately needs. I have a few friends who are, EMS workers, right? And, it's a very life-changing job, right? They have brought their families out of poverty with these jobs. And so I want to be able to lift more folks out of poverty with these jobs, and to prohibit, to put roadblocks in their way for folks applying for these jobs that's unnecessarily, I think, is something that we should really look into. And one more question about fire safety in the city, and our commercial corridors. In my district, there are commercial corridors that have the steel gates that come down. A lot of them we can't see through. I know like we had a fire on Lehigh Avenue, for example, next to the library, and they had like 3 holes in their gate. So I know that creates a safety issue for the firefighters. What is your position on those solid metal gates, and would you be supportive of legislation that kind of eliminates some of that on some of our commercial corridors?
So thank you for your question, council member. So in the past, when they went from brick and mortar on the windows and wire lath and wood on the windows to these new systems, the first thing we did was we made sure that we had everybody trained in the ladder companies who make forcible entry in those systems. I don't know if the systems have been updated since then, because I was a firefighter the last time that I had that training. But we are open to seeing what other options we have, because we also don't want to have it open enough to access where people can go in there and start fires. So we don't want that. So we are open to looking at alternatives to make it harder for non-firefighting folks to get into those places, but easier for us if we needed to.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Rue Landau.
Just a couple questions real quick for fire. I think, just to follow up on Councilmember Young's questions, you have a 2-year list for firefighters, but while that list is good and you're still using it, do you open up another list? You said it was rotating.
Yes.
From my time in the city, you have a 2-year list, you have people on the list, and you start going down the pecking of the list, but it's not open. So the 18-year-old kid who wants to apply to be a firefighter, if there's a list only 1 year in, they can't apply until that list is expired or close to expired, so they might have to wait a year or so to even apply. Is that how it works for you?
No. To answer your question, you can always apply for the firefighters. You can always apply to for the firefighters position.
Okay.
But I think the question is, The length of the list is 2 years. And then we are obligated to open the testing piece, open it up again after those 2 years.
So you're 18, you're in high school, you want to apply to be a firefighter, but you're only 1 year into the list. You'd have to wait another year to even take the test. That's not. I think that's what it's like. That's what it's like for all of those things.
Got you. So to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, once the testing process is over, yes.
Love to work with you on that as well. On all of Councilman Harity and I are ready to work with civil service to make this all go faster so that you can get on a list and start moving it faster. Okay, for prisons, again, thank you. I was concerned about the comment of that this is often a revolving population. And I think as a city, we can do more and better. First of all, on the front end, so people never make it to prisons in the first place, but also upon discharge as well, to make sure that we are really setting people up on a path so that they don't come back into the prisons. So do the prisons, or does, in your knowledge, does any other entity of the city, whether it's DBH, IDS, or anybody else, track the folks who are being discharged from the prison to see what's happening, and are they continuing on a path of success so they don't get back in?
Yes, and that's usually the Office of Reentry programs.
Okay. And then can I ask one more question? So since 2020, more than 53 people have died in the prisons. How do you notify, how are the family members notified when somebody passes away in jail? And what's the investigation process for these deaths? And what are the, do you have, could you tell us the categories of how the folks have died?
Well, what I can tell you is how the families are notified. I cannot tell you the investigation process, because those deaths are what we call active investigations, because some of them may be criminal in nature, in which case we don't speak on that. But how the families are notified is twofold. Our social services administrators, they'll notify the families, along with our chaplaincy services, they will reach out to the families also. Once something like that, tragedy happens, there's a lot of times when the information that we may have may not be up to date. So we end up reaching out to outside services to help us. We go into the community, see the last place the person may have resided, but we do everything until we can reach somebody. Yes.
On the medical side, we have 3 different levels of morbidity and mortality review. They're industry standard reviews with all the participating providers, and 2 of those are internal. One's done by YesCare, one's done by YesCare plus the city staff. Of course, the medical examiner also comments on the cause of death, and the 3rd review is done with outside physician reviewers. So there's 3 different levels where to see if we've done anything wrong or something that we could improve upon.
Okay, thank you.
And if you look at a 5-year average, not that deaths are something to be excused by any means, but our average is consistent with what occurs across other jurisdictions in the United States.
That is awful. Thank you.
Yeah. But not worse.
Thank you, Member Rulandow. And then also, I did pick up when you talked about the revolving door component. Hopefully the programs that y'all are doing and you're able to ramp up, again, and get to the root causes of hopefully people don't come in and out. But I've also been doing this work, again, on a state road level up to Greater Ford, Mahanoy, Holtsdale, and sad and unfortunately, you do see some folks you may have hoped for whatever reasons in life, wind up in that same cycle. So I think the more programming that we can provide to the best of our ability, cracks down on that recidivism rate.
I think the key, and this is something that has always been near and dear to me, is those trades, getting people into those trade skills. Those are trade skills, like I said before, either you can latch on to somebody, or a lot of them, you can become that handyman and work for yourself. But just learning a trade, carpentry, plumbing, electrical, things like that that's going to be the key.
So I want to put Adam Thiel on the spot as the managing director, and would like to hopefully follow up with him and my chairman of labor, Jim Hardy, and maybe bring the chair of the building trades, Ryan Boyer, into this conversation to see how we can best all be supportive of one another, because ultimately we are rowing in the same direction. We all ultimately want the same thing, and that's, as our mayors say, a safer, cleaner, greener city, but most importantly, a city with economic opportunity for all, because it's that economic opportunity which is the root cause of why we see a lot of things taking place throughout the city of Philadelphia when it comes to public safety. And so, with that being said, I'm going to call on Councilman Ketsi Lozada.
I just have one question for fire. For many years, even prior to me becoming a council person, there was always a question about cultural competence or cultural relationships between fire department or engine houses, firehouses, ladders, and community residents. And we often put a whole lot of emphasis on community policing. What are you all doing to ensure that there's a community fire department relationship in the community? Because I'm hearing that there's still not one, right? It's always them versus us, and we're not coming out of this structure unless there's a 911 call. What are you all doing to make that relationship or build that relationship, make it better?
So thank you for your question, council member. So every firehouse has community risk reduction. It's part of their daily duties. And part of that is reaching out to the community. Part of that is going out into the community and, when we do smoke alarm installation, for example, making sure we pick a block that there's been a fire or something on and make sure we put up smoke alarms, but also have members from our prevention team out there giving out leaflets and giving out information. And this is more specific, I believe, to your question. A lot of that openness to the area is cultural, and we as a department we've advanced in dealing with the community in which we serve, other than just on emergency calls, but there's plenty of more work to do. Like we always make it a point to try to get our fire prevention division assets out to schools in all communities, but in communities where not only do they go out and give fire prevention tips, but then the company from that surrounds that area goes out and does a fire drill in unison. So they're doing a fire drill at the school while our fire prevention division is out there giving helpful tips. I have been on the fire department for 37 years, and it has gotten better, our community relations, but it could always get better. The mere fact that in some communities you close the doors, but in other communities you don't, is something that we constantly work on. And we do it through our professional standards officer, our recruitment units, and we just make it a point to try to make sure that the culture understands that you are also a visitor to this community. And as a visitor to this community, the community needs to be treated with respect.
I just want to note for the record that in districts like mine, the 7th Council District, the fire department has a lot of work to do. Y'all really have to become a part of the community. Y'all have to show that community that you care about them, and your leadership has to be reflective of the community that you represent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Rourke.
President, thank you, Council President. I know I said I didn't have any more, but Councilwoman Lowndel's referencing of the deaths that were happening in the prisons, I wanted to speak to that. 4 out of the 6 of the deaths, the last deaths that took place, occurred in jail. They occurred in jail within 10 days of the person being admitted, if that makes sense. 4 of the last 6 occurred within the first 10 days of them being admitted. Given that so many of the recent deaths have happened in the quarantine units, where people are housed for their first 2 weeks in custody, what's the department doing to better ensure the safety of people in quarantine and address their medical needs? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the quarantine units, we changed the tour times. The standard tour times is every 30 minutes, and officers should be touring the housing unit, making sure it's all right. For quarantine and new intakes, it's every 20 minutes. They have to tour those units every 20 minutes because we know that the first 24 hours of a person being incarcerated is the highest rate of them getting really ill, the withdrawal, and in some cases dying because of that. The other things are when they are in the intake units and they're coming down off of certain whatever drugs they're on, they're unstable. And they may be in a cell with another person, and then that instability happens and the fight breaks out, things like that. So that's why the tours in those areas are broken down to 20 minutes.
Actually, I wasn't going to ask the second part, but because you kind of spoke to it earlier, but brings to mind what's happening with the fentanyl now, with the open wounds, the xylazine, I guess the standard is calling that. How are y'all dealing with that? I know that you're doing the rounds, but do you have any way to deal with open wounds for folks sitting in the corner?
Yes, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Herdman, but the xylazine, which is the street name Trank, we do wound care. Our medical staff does wound care all the time, you know, looking for those open wounds or whatever. So that happens on all shifts, all day. There's a set time to change the wounds, the bandages, and all of that. That happens all the time. But I'll let Dr. Herdman speak more to that.
Yeah, we have 320 full-time healthcare staff at the jail. We provide about 250,000 encounters and visits a year. It's a huge volume of service that's provided, not as timely at the moment as we just discussed. Anybody that's on a withdrawal protocol is seen 3 times a day by nursing staff. And if necessary, they're seen by a wound care nurse, and there's also wound care specialists, and then we have wound care specialist consultants that we send some people to because some of these wounds are terrible. Yeah.
And then I do have one more question. After 16 years of being housed in Riverside Correctional Facility, incarcerated women were abruptly moved in the middle of the pandemic, August in 2020, into 2 different facilities, ASD and Mod 3. Both of these are much older facilities with serious unaddressed maintenance needs. Then more recently, the women were moved from ASD and Mod 3 into PICC with little notice. While women are a small fraction of the population in our jails, though I should say that black women of childbearing age are the ones that are most quickly going in, they are disproportionately impacted by trauma and deserve a safe, stable, and clean environment just as much as everyone else who is incarcerated. What are you all doing to ensure that women have a consistent facility that meets basic health, basic safety, cleanliness standards?
So, and the first thing is no matter how old the facility is, we do maintain cleanliness. I know some of the cosmetics may seem different, but we maintain cleanliness. The reason for the move for the women at RCF was that that population had dwindled down to 210. They were occupying an 850-bed facility. Our male population had rose so high that we needed a place to place the males. So to have 210 female incarcerated women in an 800-plus bed facility was just not responsible enough, so we had to move them down. That 210 did take up the ASD and MOD 3 area, which was fine. Then the female population upticked a little bit. They went up past 300. So what we did was we put the females back at the original spot, which they are right now at PICC. That's why that move happened.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you.
You're welcome. And as we wrap up, Councilman Jay Young.
Thank you, Council President. Just one question for prisons. What policies or procedures are in place to help protect some of the COs, essentially when they are off duty, right? They come back to Philly, they come back to a city where they are, guarding folks that are also coming back to the city at some point. So could you tell us what policies are in place to ensure the safety and protection of COs as they are members and residents of the city of Philadelphia as well?
Well, the officers have the same rights and responsibilities as every citizen of Philadelphia. But they are, if something happens to them, whereas a former incarcerated person, they may engage them and something happens, their instructions are to go to the nearest police district, identify who they are, identify the issue. If they know the person that they had the run-in with, identify them also, because now we have a track record. Anytime an officer gets in any type of situation where they need to press formal charges, that's the policy and the procedure. Then they must alert us that they had this engagement. They have to alert us within 24 hours that they had this engagement so we can do our part at our Office of Professional Compliance. So that is the policies that's set forth for the staff.
So what is your part in that?
So then there's an investigation done from the Office of Professional Compliance, the notation. We will always reach out to our police partners to get all of the forms that was taken. We now have a file of what happened. If that person is now taken into custody where this incident happened, we'll make sure, one, that the officer is not in the same facility as this individual, and that there's an alert on this individual to make sure that everybody's aware of what happened.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. This wraps up. We want to thank both of you for your testimony. I'll let you know if we'll do a call back, because some members still have a variety of different questions and or concerns, but we're going to call it L9. Just for the record also, for Commissioner Murphy, give my regards to Lieutenant Rick Davidson from South Philadelphia, and also Chucky McCalkin. He's from Engine 24, Local 22. So we thank the two of you for taking time out of your schedule to join us today, and thank you very much for your testimony. All right, man. They may bring them back. Oh, the last one. Yeah, we're on the group text, and folks are not happy. Want to thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to start with Ms. Bridget Greenwald. It was good to see you. Basil, was also a good opportunity to see you again. Had a chance to speak to you briefly some time ago.
Yes.
Bridget, I do know from the Office of Public Property, and so congratulations to both of you on your new positions. Look forward to working with you. And Bridget, just state your name and title for the record and begin your testimony.
Okay. Good afternoon, Council President Johnson and members of City Council. I'm Bridget Collins Greenwald, the newly appointed Commissioner of the Licenses and Inspection Quality of Life Division. And with me today is my wonderful and also newly appointed counterpart, Basil Miranda, who is the Commissioner of L&I's Inspection, Safety, and Compliance Division. Basil and I are committed to working together to ensure that the newly reorganized, AKA the split, of L&I is done in a thoughtful, common sense manner that will prove to be successful for all. It is still a work in progress, but we have made tremendous strides in a very short amount of time. As you have our written testimony in front of you that highlights the department's many accomplishments and plans, we will not go into those details right now. We would like to add that Basil and myself, along with all of the amazing and dedicated employees in L&I, will work with you in a strategic, proactive, and collaborative mode to ensure success. I will now turn it over to Basil for a brief conclusion so we can get into questions.
Council President, Bridget is wonderful too.
Oh, end scene. That's it.
Yes, give me 1 second.
No one can.
Go ahead, you're good.
Bridget is wonderful too. As everyone knows, Bridget's stellar reputation precedes her. But this is the first time that I've had the pleasure to work with Bridget. And from our first meeting, we connected and gelled together. We both recognized the importance of getting the reorganization of L&I done the right way and how it can be more effectively carry out Mayor Parker's vision and agenda for the city and improve every neighborhood in the city. To use an old, outdated historical reference, Bridget and I will not be setting up any iron curtains between our two divisions. Rest assured, we certainly will not operate our L&I divisions as government silos, which, as you know, can unfortunately disrupt and frustrate the effective delivery of government services. We will work collaboratively because that is the one and only way to make Mayor Parker's historic reorganization of L&I work best for the city. So when it's all said and done, Bridget and I, as fourth and third generation Philadelphians, respectively, know the importance of L&I and how it is the one department of city government that can have a direct, positive impact on the everyday life of every Philadelphia citizen. As a result, L&I can bring Mayor Parker's vision and agenda for a safer, cleaner, greener Philadelphia with access to economic opportunity for all directly into the living rooms, onto the kitchen tables, and right in the front steps and stoops of every home in every neighborhood in the city. Thank you for indulging us and for your attention and consideration. We look forward to answering any questions you may have. And Bridget and I would just ask you to go a little easy on us because we've been here only a month.
Easy
so we're just sorting through. And Council President, here's another historical reference. Rome wasn't built in a day. Bridget and I asked for your patience and cooperation. If you give us some time, we can get this done with effectiveness and vigor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If only I could tell my constituents that as soon as I got elected. Can I get a break, please? They said no. That's what you signed up for. But in all seriousness, I do again say congratulations, and I know y'all kicking off a new administration. But also we have to work with a sense of urgency, right? Because in the city of Philadelphia, there's a variety of different quality of life issues that we need to address to make sure we're on the path of a safer, cleaner, greener city with economic opportunity for everyone. And so we have, for me, a short window period to change the narrative of being the #1 big city when it comes to poverty in America. And I believe that during this administration, if not now, when, and if not us, then who? And so with that being said, my first question is along the lines of How are you addressing the number of vacancies and recruiting in terms of staffing up? According to this budget item for FY '24 versus FY '25, I don't see actually I see a slight decrease in terms of actual funding. And so how are you dealing with, and either one of you can answer, the strategy, recruitment and actually addressing the vacancies? Because I know clean and green is a key component, and that quality of life, like how I called you, Basil, about, and Bridget, regarding the illegal cars being worked on in the streets of Southwest Philadelphia, which is tearing down the quality of life for the area, which is a part of clean and green, but yet the budget doesn't show a significant increase, and then also you have vacancies. And so can you give me an explanation as to why that's the case?
Yes, we absolutely can. So L&I for the past several years has had over a 2.5 million average surplus in Class 100. So what we have done, Basil and I, in this short period of time, have looked at the vacancies and where they exist, and we realize where we need to put our efforts, right? So inspectors are key, right? On my end, it's a little bit easier. The code enforcement inspectors don't have to have the code background that Basil's would have to, the building inspection team. So he has a little bit more of a recruitment issue because he has to actually get those folks, up to being certified by the ICC or the UCC. So we actually have, on the code enforcement end, we have an existing list right now that we're working with our HR staff to staff up. We actually have another test coming out. We actually have plans to work with CCP because we feel like that's a good place to recruit from, especially if you want to be in there with your 2-year degree. We can offer something, probably a little bit of provisional, and then go into a full-time position. We're actually starting this in DPP as well, so we think that's a good place to start. I think that we have to just put our minds to it and actually just start going out there and doing these things. Like I said, on my end, I think it's a little easier. On Basil's, he has a little bit more of a challenge because you need some bit of a trades background.
So, Basil, what's your strategy?
Council President,
you come highly regarded from the folks over the trades too, just to let you know.
You hit the nail
Ryan
right.
Boyer said he's a good guy. I didn't know you at the time, but he said, my God, Basil coming over there. He's a good guy, but go ahead.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. That's going to be the most challenging part of the reorganization and reinvigoration on my part. So 2 weeks ago, on March 28th, I asked the 3 folks that have been working with me on the transition, Kirk McLaren, Joe DiOrio, and Joe Mahaffey, to delay early dismissal for the holiday so we could discuss how to get the ball rolling on filling the vacancies on my side of the department. And they stayed till past 4:30. We came up with what we were calling a full court press with 5 points. Number 1, the existing list. We will use the existing list of applicants to bring on 10 new building inspectors. We asked ourselves, why should we let this list fall by the wayside? So we're going to kind of use that going forward to bring on 10 additional inspectors. We're aiming for maybe in July. The second approach is we're going to announce a new hiring list. OHR will make it operational on May 27th, and we asked, and OHR agreed, to leave open the announcement for 4 weeks instead of the routine 2 weeks. And this list, we hope to bring on 10 additional building inspectors. We're also, the third point, we're going to establish a separate list for construction plans review specialists. We want to take steps to try to encourage inspectors who left L&I for perceived greener pastures in the counties and with the third-party inspectors. And we want to come back to this new, improved L&I. And, we're going to fight fire with fire because the counties took our folks away from us, and we're going to try to take them back. Simple as that. The fourth point, we're going to change the job description for the 5 positions allocated to audits and investigation. To make it easier to hire and get these folks in the field more quicker, We want to change that job description to a field investigator because they don't require the extensive construction experience and inspection certifications that are required from our inspectors. They instead need a skill set of investigations, audits, and things of that nature. And we hope to bring them on before the end of the new fiscal year. And the fifth point is the current class of 12 inspectors. We anticipate them to be fully certified and in the field by the end of May or early June. They have only 2 more certs to finish. They presently are doing field work, partnering up with more experienced inspectors to get a feel for the job and get some on-the-job experience. And we're excited about that class of inspectors because that would be the first group to begin working under Mayor Parker's new and improved L&I. So I think we have a plan and we're ready to execute on it, Council President.
Thank you. On the building permit side, what are we doing to streamline that process?
Well, the one big thing that we're going to do is the new improvements on Eclipse. We're moving away from we're moving towards a, what do they call it, a mobile web base. So that would make it a lot easier for folks to apply for permits, folks to apply for licenses from a mobile app, so to speak.
So this will be a one-stop shop?
Correct, yep.
Let me ask you this. Now, I've dealt with a lot of development in my district, and a lot of times folks will say that there's a process where L&I will come out and review your plans. Let's say they want you to change something. It's like another 90 days for them to have the opportunity to come back in front of you to present. Is there any way we can cut that time period down?
We're going to try. Well, suppose your folks would kind of reach out to us so we could talk to them and see what specifically the problems are and then devise a strategy to address that. Bridget and I both want to make L&I more accessible, responsive, and accountable. So we've been more than willing to sit down with your office, your staff, your constituents to sort that out.
Have we thought about taking an approach where when the governor, under Shapiro, they have a guaranteed turnaround process that if they don't get certain permits in a certain time period, then you get your money back? Or have we begun to explore, because I know part of the mayor's address, I think Aaron Platt supposed to be responsible for making sure this process is more efficient and streamlined. Sure. So I just want to get an idea where we at in terms of that process.
This one. So we're working twofold. Actually, Eliza, who works for the governor and used to work here, who's fantastic, reached out to me probably the first day we were appointed and said, hey, I want to sit down with you and come up with ways. I want to show you what we did in the state's office. So I've had one meeting with her. She's going to come back. Me and her are going to sit down and talk about some things with Basil and figure out what steps they cut out. There's also the Mayor's Open for Business with Commerce. We're working with them. We're actually doing a crosswalk of the licenses to see what pieces need to come out. I agree with you 1,000% that there's a lot of things in there that I'm sure we can streamline.
I think just from a development and a business-friendly standpoint, whatever we can do to make that climate a little more efficient, I think goes toward us recruiting businesses and businesses staying. And my last question before I relax my time to my members is, have we ever done, and you are new, so obviously this wouldn't be under your regime because you're just getting started, but something to think about data-wise. I really would like to see, from a code enforcement standpoint, what neighborhoods receive more enforcement than others, right? Because I often get times based upon, my area is gentrified, that some mom and pop long-term residents just feel like L&I is a little heavy on them, right? And we want to hold people accountable. We want to follow the law, right? But we want to make sure it's also equally distributed across the board, because sometimes, your office could be weaponized. You'll see in the future. Sometimes it could be weaponized as a way to get properties pride away from individuals and then developers swoop in because people can't pay all the fines and fees that may racked up. And they should address the issues irregardless, so they won't get the fines and fees. But in some gentrified neighborhoods, you might have been holding on properties for a significant period of time, right? May not have the finances to kind of do all the code updates at one particular time, but you're trying. But I just want to make sure from a disparity standpoint, it's just equally enforced across the board. So at some point in time, I know you're new, so we don't have to have this conversation now, but in the future, I would like to see some type of data to kind of see what does enforcement look like across the city of Philadelphia. I'll save quality of life for my next round because I want my members to get some questions in before we wrap up. The chair recognizes Councilmember Ketty Lozada.
Oh, I'll go first this time. How about that? First, let me just say thank you to Bridget and Tom McDade, who are amazing at responding to all of my crazy requests. I call a lot about quality of life issues. They're one of the things that my residents complain about all the time. And so I want to know, what do you need? Now that the L&I has been divided up into sections the way that it has been, what do you need to be able to effectively and efficiently respond to quality of life concerns that are reported to you, either through 311 or directly? And how do we enforce or work with the police department to be able to enforce or understand how enforcement is going to work, specifically when it comes to legislation like mine, where businesses within a certain target area have to close at 11 p.m., or beyond my legislation, where businesses in an 80% residential neighborhood are required to close at 11 p.m.
I think, first of all, you said efficiently, and that's exactly what we want to do, right? And no problem, I will pass along to Tom McDade, hopefully he's watching, and you gave him the compliment.
I absolutely love him.
Oh, now the head will be.
He needs a raise.
Yes, but efficiently. So our plan is to be very proactive. So we do plan to meet with every council member, including district council members. I know you don't, including at large. We know you don't have an area per se, but there are issues that I know that you were concerned about. So we're going to have a proactive meeting. We want to see where your pain points are, and then we want to come up with a strategy from there. But we really want to do these one-off inspections. I know we get complaints, and that absolutely is something that we have to handle. We want to go into this where we're collaborating with our partners at CLIP, with Clean and Green, with Streets, with Water, with Health, with Commerce, and go in and really make a difference in neighborhoods. We want to educate first, and then enforce, and then abate, right? So some people don't know, like the curfew law. I mean, you put it out there, maybe some don't know. So we want to do some education around it. Then we want to do some enforcement, and then there'll be some abatement, whether that's working with the police department to do something licensed, whether it's us pulling a license, whatever that is. So I think we're going to get there, but I really want to strategically figure out what we're doing, to the council president's point, in areas of the city, and who we're going to partner with. And I think we're going to have a really strong, proactive strategy going forward, instead of, like, I'm calling it whack-a-mole now, where you're just kind of, trying to figure out what to do. So for us, for what we need right now from anyone in council, I think what we'll need is your input, and we'll need your support and partnership, which I've always had in the past, so I think we'll be really successful. So there'll be more details to come when we reach out to you. We are going to be really focused on, we'll come with, like, here are like 5 questions, and let's walk through them and figure out what we need to do. So I think it'll be good.
Are we working with the Commerce Department? If we're starting to say Philadelphia is open for business,
yep.
We want you to come here. We welcome you to our commercial corridors that are the economic engine of neighborhoods. Are we working with them to ensure that these new businesses understand what the policies are at the front end, on the front end, right? As opposed to them receiving a visit from an inspector and then getting a warning or a violation.
Yes, we're involved with Karen Fegley and Alba in Commerce, and we're working with them, the Open for Business initiative. We reached out to them before we even knew about the Open for Business, like we knew about it, but we didn't know as much, so they've been educating us. So yes, our whole plan, Betsy Baldwin of LNI, who a lot of people know, our chief code official, she's working with Commerce to actually really take out these steps that we were talking about, and how do you do business, and actually coming up with some very educational pieces for businesses, because I know it's hard. It's like, you know, you're coming in to start something, you think you just want to open a business, and we have all these regulations. But there's easier ways to get through it. So yes, we're working with all of those groups.
And then my last question, there has been a lot of issues around these convenience stores that open up in neighborhoods within a 10-day period. Apparently, they're using a grocery store license or grocery store permit to open up their establishment, but they go beyond what the required closing time is, right? Many of them stay open 24 hours a day. What are we doing to enforce that 80% residential or 80% resident, if you're in 80% residential closing at 11 p.m. And what are we doing to figure out if that is the most appropriate type of permit or license that they need to be able to operate?
I'm going to be honest, I do not know the exact answer to that right now, but I will get back to you. I think you and I had spoke, and we're working with the police department too on some of those issues to see how their nuisance unit is addressing curfews and things of that nature in these businesses. So I will get back to you with an answer when I have a better one. I don't want to just kind of throw something out there yet.
Okay. Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. Chair of License and Inspections, Councilmember Mike Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I have an affinity to the Department of License and Inspection since we worked so closely last year on the Joint Task Force on Regulatory Reform. As chair, Mr. Commissioner, I think you did a wonderful job. You have a 31-page report that I'm sure you read every day. I think it's a good guideline. I think Mayor Parker, in splitting this department by executive order, I think she took some of that from this report, and I'm thrilled that we're going down that path. The budget, I noticed, though, does not reflect 2 commissioners, nor does it reflect, in my opinion, the amount of executive staff you're going to need to get things off the ground. Is it just because you're new, or are there any restrictions we can help you with there?
Yeah, I think that's the case, Councilmember Driscoll, that we're just starting on this process. We've only been on the job at LNI since March 4th, so it's a little more than a month, and we're just trying to feel out how we can divide up the department. Bridget and I have literally just sat down together and decided, well, this should stay with Bridget, this should go with me. So we're in the infancy stage, I would say. And if you could indulge me 1 second, Council President, I like to, as the chair of the task force, I like to put on the record that I would like to publicly thank Mayor Parker, former Mayor Kenny, Council President Johnson, former Council President Clark, Council Member Driscoll and his staff for the support they gave my fellow task members and me with the task force. Their support was indispensable and enabled us to carry out our duties effectively. I must say that the report of the task force is a solid work of comprehensive public policy, and I would urge staff members and the public at large to take some time and read the report, because we wrote it in such a way that it's an easy read. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you for your indulgence.
Yeah, I just want to say on the record that as soon as Councilmember Mike Driscoll, former state representative, arrived in City Council, he stepped up to the plate and said, this is an issue that's very near and dear to me that I'm going to tackle. I think he has some additional plans in terms of training facilities also that he's focusing on regarding taking LNI to the next level. So publicly, keep up the good work, and thank you for your hard work and your dedication. It's a very, very critically important department. I know a couple years ago on Market Street, we had a tragedy took place in the city of Philadelphia, and it really reinforced how important the Department of License and Inspection is, and also throughout all of our councilmanic districts here in the city of Philadelphia and all of the neighborhoods, especially where we see significant development taking place, and we're having contractors destroying the homes of long-term residents all throughout every neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia, and they look to license and inspections as the last place to go in terms of some level of support when it comes to unscrupulous contractors destroying their homes. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President,
Mr. Chairman.
for the kind words there. Before I even took the oath, contractors, the business community, the theme was Fix L&I. And so we began that process through the legislature and through this report, I think through Mayor Parker's 2 great selections to lead the department. I just look forward to your work. I think that rapid response team that we talked about during those meetings is important. I think going after the problem contractors is important. As Council President stated, we always think of the police department and the fire department as the public safety divisions of government. Well, equally as important, if not more, is L&I. So you have a great challenge ahead of you, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Council.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Anthony Phillips.
Thank you, Council President. Numerous individuals are seeking support from L&I, and this demand is steadily increasing. Does L&I budget allocate resources for hosting community meetings or events to offer direct support in each councilmanic district around L&I issues for our residents?
So I think that goes to what Basil and I were talking about earlier, that we are actually planning to meet with each council member at district and at large to figure out where their pain points are. I imagine that they'll involve a lot of community meetings and things of that nature. So do we have the resources to do it? Yeah, I think we can definitely have some people representative and then actually coming up with plans based on all those meetings.
Okay, thank you. In our office, we receive a lot of complaints regarding nuisance and illegal business operations in the evening, in the time that L&I inspector response to the activity ceases. What is L&I currently doing to address these issues that occur after normal hours? And what is the plan in this budget to address these type of complaints?
So L&I does have a nuisance unit that goes out at night. So that unit, so if there are complaints that come after, normal working hours, that unit is the unit that goes out. It's part of the code enforcement group, so it'll be part of my group, I guess.
But the hours stop at a certain time, right?
What's that?
They stop at a certain time, right?
So they start after working hours, so they could go to whenever, you know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like, so it would be depending on, case by case. So if we were looking at, I guess, like, I'll just say bars that are staying open past their time, then they would be out past that time.
So if I tell you something happens normally around 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, that can be scheduled for you all to come out right at that time?
Yeah.
Perfect. I just want to make sure that's better this time. How will both L&I units ensure transparency regarding complaints? So when we talk about transparency, residents want to see visually or something around the transparency of like their L&I complaints. How do we make sure, like for example, when a request is made, when the enforcement officer came out, what was said, like that level of transparency, how can we make that better?
So currently, they take pictures of everything. So if there is a problem, so say there's a vacant property, right? So a vacant house they go to. So, and they clean and seal it up. There are pictures involved. They go into the Eclipse system, and then you can always also go, if you have access to the internet, you can go onto www.phil.gov and go onto Atlas, and you can see everything that's done. So every case, every inspection, anything that's done.
No, that's what I'm saying. I know that exists, but what I'm saying is more so something around like when their request goes in, like where are they in line, like in terms of like getting their response, and then also I think it's when I talk about transparency, it's more so like an online tracking system that kind of takes the user, the resident from like the start to finish to the request. So they're not just constantly hitting us up about
I think
it.
that the new enhancements that we're talking about to the Eclipse system, when they go web-based and mobile-based, you'll be able to do that. You can't now, but I do believe that those enhancements, which are funded this year, they were just funded, so we should be getting them, and I think then you'll be able to see more transparency and be able to monitor and track what's going on now.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I just have a couple of questions, and it's really along, I think, the same lines as everybody else. And it's really around enforcement, nuisance businesses. You know, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem because when you have a nuisance business, the problems that come out of that business, you know, it just, you know, emits into the neighborhood, into the community. It becomes a gathering spot for nefarious activities and, you know, all kinds of negativity. And it's just, you know, it becomes a much bigger problem. And, you know, in the past, we've had some, you know, great commissioners, and you guys are, you know, Bridget, we worked together for many years, and you've always been great. And Basil, I look forward to working with you as well. And you come very highly recommended. So, but I'm trying to figure out, how do we move the needle? Because so much of the work that we need, really, in my opinion, is around enforcement. And we just haven't had the level of enforcement that we should be able to have, in my opinion. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Smoke shops. You know, they operate with a grocery license. But the question is, shouldn't there be a separate type of license that they should be operating out from under, that, you know, other than a grocery store? You know, the sale of like certain tobacco products, you know, shouldn't they be operating with a different license? You know, and what was the other one? Store window fronts. You know, I can't remember where I was, but, you know, I think that the requirement is that 80% of a store's window is open. So you can look inside of a store establishment and see what's going on before you walk in, because you don't know sometimes you don't know what you're walking into. And I heard, you know, someone from LNI saying, well, the rule is 80%, but if it's, you know, if it's, you know, 70% or 60% covered or something like that, you know, we just let it go. And, you know, that was Bridget, your reaction was my reaction. Like, you know, like, this is no. So, you know, we really do need a level of enforcement that we just haven't had with great commissioners, you know, everybody working hard, everybody working together. But, you know, I don't know if it's something that we need to legislate differently. And if so, you know, we need guidance from you on what the legislation needs to look like and sound like, but also from the enforcement side on your end, we need for your folks to embrace what it is that we're going to be requiring. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, so I think your question twofold. Do we probably need some legislative changes on how these licenses work? Yes.
Yes.
So that'll be something, I'm sure, when we come back after we have these meetings and figure out, and after I figure out a little bit more what I'm doing, that we will come back to you and say, yeah, we need a couple things to happen. Secondly, as for the enforcement of, will we let that go, or we don't do this, or we do, that's going to stop. So we will make sure that we're going to have, there are policies in place, and there are things that happen, and you know, you get that policy book that's like, you know, 400 pages, and people forget to look at it, right? So we're going to be doing some more focused training. We've actually, we think we have the beginnings of a good foundation, a lot of refresher trainings for people and things like that. So I think we will get there, and I think we'll all move forward in the same direction. That's the plan.
That will be wonderful. And the other question I have around enforcement is on the construction side of things. And I'll give you an example. We had a store that was building an addition or something. And so my staff went out and said, you know, like, okay, we got complaints, you know, it was checked out, you can't do this. And LNI came out, and I think they gave them, you know, like a certain amount of time, I don't know, 30, 60, 90 days or something like that, to correct it. And so we happened to be driving by one day, and they were doing the opposite of what they were supposed to be doing. And so, you know, we jumped out and we was like, oh, you can't do that. And the owner of the property told his workers, finish it up. By the time they get out here, it'll all be covered up, and, you know, they're not going to make me uncover it. And so this is the way a lot of folks do construction. They put up whatever, they do whatever. I was just at a construction site a moment ago, and one of the issues is someone said, well, they built, they're building houses and, in this neighborhood. And he said, well, somebody built a foot onto my property, and it's just so common that this is happening. And they had to have L&I come out and tell the folks, you got to tear down that wall and move your, basically, really compromise the integrity of the construction that was done. And but they were wrong to build onto someone else's property. So how do we address that? How do we get, on the construction end? Like, we have to move faster. We have to send a signal that if you build on somebody else's property, if you go over that line, L&I is going to come out here and they're going to cost you probably tens of thousands of dollars on your project. So it's not even worth it to do that. How do we spread that message and, get folks to behave properly?
Councilmember, one of my priorities is to step up the enforcement of problematic contractors. And I use that term contractors loosely. These folks are, the Philadelphia Inquirer series, Crumbling Structures, said it best, described these contractors as, quote, fly-by-nights. Now, I haven't heard that expression since I was a kid. It's growing up in South Philly. So I want to take on these problematic contractors. They're not code compliant. They're not properly licensed. They're not meeting their tax obligations. They're not respecting the neighborhood. They're not treating their workers fairly. And what I planned to do with that was a coordinated effort between our audits and investigation unit, our complaints unit, and also coordinating with the district inspectors. The audits and investigation unit is that mobile unit that can get out to a work site and check on the licenses of the contractors. The complaints unit can go out and check on whether or not the work is being done pursuant to permits. And then we want to kind of circle back with our district inspectors to see if there's any patterns developing. If this one particular contractor is kind of making his presence felt all over the city. And then we could kind of come up with a more strategic approach to these, bad contractors, and kind of step up enforcement and get the message out that there's a new cop on the beat, and we want to clean up the way they do business.
Can I, one quick question, what's your timeline?
We're up and running now. We're up and running now, and like I said, hopefully we can get the additional 5 positions in the audits and investigation unit filled within a couple of months. The head of our audits and investigation unit is a fellow by the name of Joe Serrano. Top-notch guy, he's a retired police officer, and he's got a lot of good ideas for proactive investigations. So we're excited about that. And our complaints unit is headed by an experienced inspector, Bob Keenan, who knows his way around construction sites, and working together, I think we can make a dent.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Councilman Rue Landau.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you. Excited for all of this change. To start with 2 specific budget questions, my understanding is that L&I receives $490,000 in annual CDBG funding to fund the salaries of 7 building inspectors. Is that, does that fund the entire demolition staff?
No, it does not. So it funds 7 of them, and 7 out of the 30, maybe, I don't know off the top of my head how many there are, but it's funds 7. I have it in here somewhere. Give me a sec.
That's a portion of that a bigger unit.
Okay, I'm going to keep asking questions.
Exact
Thank you
number.
for looking this up. And I am also curious, under the mayor's big push for clean and green, why there's not an increase in the L&I budget overall?
So what happened, as I said earlier, we've had a surplus in vacancies, It's averaging $2.5 million, which is a lot of positions. We have some positions that we're just going to move around and absolutely put them in this inspection, clean and seal, to Basil's point, the AIU unit. So once we maneuver all that money around, I think you're going to see an increase in the number of positions in those places. So there's some positions that we have just like kind of sitting on the books that we're not going to fill, and that's where they need to be. So because of that huge surplus, I get it. Like we'll get additional funding, I'm sure. If we get all our people hired, which would be a fantastic problem to have, we will definitely come back to this body and to the administration and say, we need a little bit more money.
We thought that would be the prudent thing to do, a good stewardship of city funds. Let's work through the vacancies, and then we can come back.
It looks like for demo, it looks like there are 20 total positions.
20 total, and then 7 of them are funded by CDBG.
7 of them are
I
CDBG.
understand. So the next question is, Black and brown majority neighborhoods have disproportionate level of unsafe and derelict structures, and the question is, what neighborhoods are you prioritizing under, have you created a racial equity plan, and what neighborhoods are you prioritizing under that plan?
I think the plan's going to go to what I was saying earlier about when we're meeting with everyone. So we have an idea of where we think based on data, but we really want to get some input from the different council members on the different neighborhoods in the city. So we do not have the strategic plan as of yet, but I know we will have one. And as for a racial equity plan, we do have one. Actually, so Basil and I are getting up to speed on exactly what it entails. But I know a big part of it is actually a pay equity piece, so that's internal more than external at this point. But there are other factors that are in it. So once we get up to speed, we'll be able to share that out more of what's going on there.
Okay, look forward to that. Not cut off yet, so I'm going to keep asking a couple more. My understanding also is that it takes 150 days to demolish a dangerous property that, I'm going to put the glasses on now. And there's a plan to reduce it to 130 days. Why does it take so long? And
A lot of it has to do with due process. A lot of it has to do with time periods, timelines within the law, and a lot of it has to do to make sure that we give the property owner proper notice that their property may be subject to demolition, and we want to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's when it comes to the legal process.
Okay, understood. And then the last question for right now is, what do you, does the city currently have a landlord and or a tenant occupied building registry? Do we have a registry that we know what buildings are tenant buildings, landlord-tenant buildings?
So we know only from the rental license.
Only from the rental license. And then, is there any registry where you would know of a property that had 3 or more code violations?
So there's no registry per se. If you were actually looking for somewhere to rent, you could go on to Atlas and say, okay, here are all the open violations on a property. There's not yet.
Not yet. And last question for Basil. You said we're going to move to a mobile app. Is that mobile app going to be associated with Eclipse, or is it going to be connected to Eclipse?
Yes,
Okay.
It is part of Eclipse, right.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Council President. I have 1,000 questions for L&I, but I'm going to limit it. Given my prior experience as an attorney representing property owners, I've dealt with L&I intimately and have had horrible experiences with L&I. I'll just say that, to say the least. But just to advocate for members of my district, there are some members of my district and my community who are calling for moratorium on demolitions because we feel like L&I has been discriminately targeting properties in our district where developers have been seeking opportunities to basically get raised land, essentially, right? And so we, and just to give you an example of that, I represented a client in a zoning matter whose property caught on fire. The appeal was in place, right, for her to go to the zoning board to develop her property. The property mysteriously caught on fire, and then essentially she was given time because she had an upcoming zoning hearing date. She was given time by one inspector to, basically get the make safe and do other things that's necessary because she had a zoning hearing coming up to redevelop her property. Another inspector basically took that away and said, no, it's imminently dangerous, we got to demolish it right now, right? And so the funny thing, ironic thing is, on the day of her zoning board hearing, where her variance was approved to develop her property was torn down, right? And so how are we preventing things like that from happening? Does LNI look at the property as a whole to see what is happening, to see if there are other permits on the property before a demolition occurs?
Well, interestingly enough, the task force heard from a group of attorneys that represented homeowners and property owners and contractors and developers. And we, the task force recognized that there were some issues there. So hopefully now with a new leadership at LNI, we can kind of address some of those issues. And that's why it's very critically important that we follow due process so that everyone's rights are respected and not violated. So.
But does LNI look at the whole of the property to see if other permits were issued for development of that property before LNI demolishes the property?
I think LNI just looks at at least during my watch, I'm going to make sure that LNI looks at the structure of the property, whether it's sound structurally, and then make a decision based on that, as opposed to any other factors.
So I also represent clients in defending of Act 135 actions that are brought against their properties for being blighted and abandoned. One particular case, the property owner, after, having owned the property for 30 years, was cited by LNI for some property maintenance issues at the property. Granted, the property did have some issues being, it was vacant for some time. However, he was cited at the property itself, not where he currently lives. His tax bills go to where he currently lives. Everything goes to where he currently lives, except for the LNI notice violations. And I think that was done intentionally because if he would have received that notice violation, he would have made the corrective steps to get the property up to code before this Act 135 petition was filed. But once this Act 135 petition is filed, essentially the plaintiff the plaintiff in that particular case gets a bunch of money from the property owner essentially. So I just want LNI to have an awareness that this is happening, that there are developers under these nonprofits who are going around to basically call LNI to get enforcement actions taken against properties that they then intend to file these Act 135 complaints against to essentially get a windfall from the property owner. So just keep that in mind. I just want to bring that to your attention and bring that to your radar because there are properties that, again, have had no action whatsoever for 20 years, and then all of a sudden now that someone is interested in purchasing a property or acquiring this property through other means, now there's heavy enforcement on these properties.
Council member, that's a perfect issue that perhaps you and I can sit down, we can drill down on that and come up with some solutions and identify some issues and concerns that may be on the part of LNI.
Absolutely.
Let's see what we can do. We'll open up a dialogue.
I have a bunch already, so I'll be willing to let's engage in that. And one more, Mr. Council President, I'm sorry, I have one more regarding the storefronts. In our district, there are stores that have the entire window covered. Like literally, there are commercial quarters with the entire window covered, and it seems like there's a lack of enforcement on this issue. It's not necessarily that they go out there and it's ambiguous to say, you know, we don't know if it's 20% or not. You can clearly see that every single window was covered, creating a safety issue for the customers, for law enforcement, and et cetera. So is it, do you have a plan to address these safety issues on our commercial corridors?
So there's going to be a proactive plan to address everything on commercial corridors, not just that, but that is one part of it. I know that's a piece of it. You and I spoke out on 29th Street, and when they went out, the inspectors, they told them you have to take all that stuff down. So when we do those proactive inspections, it's going to hit everything that you're supposed to be legal for, you know, in zone 4 for businesses. So that will all be addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon. Question, I'm so happy to hear about your overhaul of the Eclipse process program. I have had so many complaints about this, particularly about how there's a lack of information sharing from, say, revenue, from the environmental report, all to actually issue the permit, right? So I'm just looking at, and this question was kind of referenced before, budget. Where have you built in what it will cost to do a full overhaul? Because I see it pretty flat for class 200, and I don't know if class 100 needs to reflect that as well. This is going to be kind of a massive project, so I just wondered what the scale of it is, how you plan for it, and what is the timeline for this?
So that money was put into L&I's budget during the transfer, during the mid-year last week. So it's a $1.5 million cost to do those enhancements. That will include doing the mobile app, it will include doing greater language access, and everyone talking to each other. The systems talking to each other. They do now. I will say that they do now. So revenue, on a part, they do now, but not in the way it needs to.
They do now when somebody has to print out their, their proof that they paid their taxes and then take it over.
They shouldn't have to do that right now, but this mobile app will make it much easier as well.
Thank you.
So that money's in there.
So anything we can help to make that happen, because time is money. We are losing revenue when we are not allowing these people to go ahead and open their business or build whatever it is they want to do. So thank you for paying attention.
Those issues were a concern for the task force also. We identified silos that the revenue wasn't communicating with L&I, and hopefully these enhancements will kind of address that in some way.
My caveat is, I used to be in the administration in Jim Kenney's first term, and I saw there was a lot of problems with tech rollouts, a lot of money midstream. So I just hope the vetting of who you're using to make these patches, to do these upgrades, have some references and fully vetted, because we don't want to spend X number of dollars and suddenly say midstream, oh, it's not working, we have to switch providers here. So thank you so much. Thank you, Council President. I'm done.
Anything else, Nina? Ms. Ahmad, we good? You straight? Good? Okay. You don't want to steal an extra one, you sure? Okay. So the chair recognizes Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Council President. Greetings. In your testimony, you state that the Quality of Life will be collaborating with other agencies to pilot proactive inspections, and that these inspections will be mirrored by clean and seal crews in designated areas of the city. Can you explain what the plan is for rolling out proactive inspections of rental properties specifically?
So I saw the resolution that you and Councilwoman Landau put out, and you'll be happy to know that we have very preliminary, but we have a preliminary foundation for how we can do proactive rental licenses. I would love to talk to you before we have the hearings on the resolution to see what you think, but they involve virtual inspections, and they involve actual going into someone's house, pre-occupancy inspections, which I think is what you're looking for, and is what we're looking for as well. And we think we can get it off the ground fairly quickly, and we think we can get it off the ground with just adding a few more inspectors in different areas. So I think the resolution's very timely because it's actually where we were going anyway, so it's good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Not that your resolution, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
good that you did it. Good timing, I meant.
You mentioned that you're targeting designated areas of the city for the proactive inspections as well. How will those areas actually be chosen?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I think you mentioned that you're targeting designated areas of the city for the proactive inspections. Is that happening at all? And how will you actually choose them?
So that's going to go back to the data that we already have, meeting with all the different council people council members to find out their areas of special, they know their districts more.
Sure.
Sometimes you have the data based on 311 callings, and that doesn't mean always where, the issues are. So we'll be meeting with council. We are collaborating with Clean and Green, very much so, CLIP, Commerce, Health, all the other agencies, to see where those pain points are. And definitely council members are going to be a very big source of that information for us.
We hear from our constituents who live in some of the worst rental housing in Philly that they too often share the same large landlords. In order to be most efficient with your resources, do you plan to target these, shall we call them bad actor landlords, with multiple violations for proactive inspections?
Yeah, that's part of this plan. Yes, it actually, LNI, the first time I was in LNI, that was something that we did. We were very proactive in that area, and for whatever reason, resources or whatnot, it kind of fell by the wayside, but we still have a plan. We still have a good foundation for a plan in place to do that.
Wonderful. As we all know, thousands of renters throughout the city experience severe habitability issues every day, such as major plumbing, electrical issues, leaks, mold, infestations, fire hazards, broken elevators, lack of heating, among other things. At the same time, in your testimony, you speak to modernizing and streamlining the business license process. If you're making it easier for property owners to get and renew rental licenses, what will be done to enforce code compliance for the bad actor landlords, or the bad actor owners, so to speak, who have patterns of repeat violations?
So I think if we can devote a small group that will handle the complaints like you just said, like, my sink doesn't work, I have a leak here, there's no heat, or all those. We can have a group that is dedicated to looking at them, like from a virtual standpoint. There are ways to do that and can be accepted into our system. Then we can have the rest of our code enforcement inspectors and what I'm calling, going back old school, the housing unit, to have them go back and actually do these pre-certifications for new tenants moving in. So you know what I'm saying? So you would have an inspection. So then if something goes bad once you're in there, then we would do this other process. But you should be moving into a place that has working plumbing, it has bathtub, it has hot water, it has no infestation, it has your smoke alarms. So we think this program's inspection piece for the housing licenses is going to accomplish all that.
Okay. You may have already kind of spoken to it, but I want to ask, what tools specifically do you have to identify owners with patterns of repeat offenses and to enforce the code?
So we have a small group in LNI that's a research and analysis group. So that is the group that we are going to charge with doing that. That group that's there now stemmed out of this program that used to be back, when was I last there? 2008, 2009. So that's where this group came from. So then they have the means to find out who these bad actors are, connect the dots. I know it's hard, right? You're an LLC here, you're an LLC here, you're this here, you're that there, you have different names. So we were very successful back then, and I think we can be so again because these research people can figure that stuff out.
The Office of Worker Protection, in kind of the spirit of that question, the Office of Worker Protections maintains a public shame list of bad actor employers who violate labor laws in the city. In your considering how to do this, have you considered creating and maintaining a similar list, like actual hard list for the bad actor landlords to help improve compliance for renters?
So we kicked around having a list, almost like, I don't want to say like Yelp, but kind of, like, okay, if you're going to move here, here's this. Now, I know I would have to run that by our law department, our risk management department before I would start something like that, but we were talking about doing something like that, like, okay, now I want to rent a property, I'm going to go online, like just like I would, I'm going to go to a restaurant, I'm going to go online and look. And then you would have like sort of reviews, but in a different way, like here are the code violations that have been here, here's what's been fixed, here, you know what I mean, a history.
Yeah.
So kind of like it more easy to use. So something along those lines. Probably would help us when we meet, before we meet with this, before the resolution hearing comes up, to get some ideas if you have some too that you've probably been thinking about, because you just mentioned it.
Very good. I got one more. Thank you, brother. In 2022, Philadelphia Bill 210205, before I got here, amended Philadelphia's property maintenance code to enable the city to perform emergency repairs, such as fix inadequate heating or serious plumbing issues. And the property owners, rather than waiting for property owners to remedy the situation. Since Bill 210205 was passed, in how many instances has L&I repaired major issues when an owner did not comply?
I do not know the answer to that. I can get back to you with that, but I do not know.
Okay. And does this year's budget include funding for emergency repairs in a real meaningful way?
I do not believe it does.
Okay.
Let me double check that, but I do not believe it does. When I went through the budget, I do not.
Please do.
Yeah.
Let us know what support and amount of funding you need to make this repair bill effective. This is, I think, particularly important when we're talking about, looking out for renters' rights and make sure that they're in habitable places. Thank you very, very much.
Sure.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. An issue that we're having all throughout the city, but definitely in my district, is with squatters. Can you talk to us about what role the department can play in removing squatters from properties, essentially when there are habitability issues with the property?
I'm just going to take a guess at this, but I mean, from my last time here, L&I cannot remove people from a property, and I still think that's the case. I mean, we can double check with Ruth. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
So
I
we
know
could
you
not do
can't
that.
remove them. I'm essentially, if there are habitability issues with the property, right, doesn't L&I have the authority to basically say that these properties are unsafe for folks to live in, and so then have them removed from the properties?
We can post it that this property is inhabitable. Could we physically remove people? No, we could not. We would tell the Philadelphia Police Department, this is what we made this. If people choose to go back in, there's nothing the Department of L&I can do except for, I would think, notify the police department. We could not physically remove them.
And when the properties are, if they do have habitability issues, and say folks are not in those properties, they do decide to comply with whatever orders that L&I has, does L&I have the ability to clean and seal those properties?
We can clean them. I mean, we can seal them, yes.
Okay. Next question I have is regarding encroachment in construction, similar to Councilwoman Bass's question. When property owners feel that their neighboring development has encroached on their properties, what can L&I do for that property owner, essentially to have them feel as if, I guess, their issue is being addressed? Like, what does L&I do in that instance when you know that there is a developer has encroached onto a neighboring property? What is the recourse, essentially, for that property owner?
First and foremost, I would advise the property owner to file a 311 complaint so that it's on the record and we can track it and we could send out a inspector to assess the situation and determine whether or not there's been a violation. So we have to keep an open mind about that. So once that is done, then we can file the appropriate NOVs, the notice of violations, and then take whatever action is appropriate based on the law.
Can you tell us what that appropriate action would be in these cases when it is determined that that developer, contractor, whoever actually did encroach onto a neighboring property?
Well, we could revoke the contractor's permit for violations. We could take appropriate financial, monetary fines imposed on the contractor. And I think any specific damage to the property owner's property, I guess that would be between the property owner and the contractor, not necessarily L&I.
Could you provide us with the data on how many times or how many instances LNI did enforce or issue violations for that type of encroachment for development?
I mean, I can do the research and get back to you, sure.
Thank you. Questions about retention at LNI. Can you tell us what is the current retention rate of inspectors and plant examiners, with at least 7 years experience, and what can be done in the long term to, retain some of these folks with this expertise?
Yeah, that's a good question, council member, and we'd have to do a little digging on that to find out and get back to you.
Thank you. What specific resources do you allocate to inspectors and plant examiners training for their job responsibilities, including in-field, on-the-job support as our frontline building safety enforcement staff?
Well, we have a training program that, according to the task force report, we should take a closer look at and see what we can do to improve that. Presently, our trainees do go out from time to time with experienced inspectors to get on-the-job training, to get real-life experience and kind of apply the book knowledge to a real-life situation. So that's probably the best way to approach all that.
Council President, I have one more question along the same lines. Does this budget take into consideration any opportunities to partner with external stakeholders to help aid LNI's training efforts like CCP, external trade organizations, the skilled trade training centers, et cetera?
Well, that's the long-run game plan for LNI with regard to training. We have to assess the entire training protocol, make sure there's a curriculum in place, make sure there's a follow-up, exercises that need to be done, and ultimately we want to create this LNI Training Academy, but it's impossible to do overnight. We need some time. I think the task force noted and recommended that type of recommendation would have to be, would have to take a little more time, and perhaps maybe by the end of the first term, the 4-year term of the mayor. But I want to point out that the mayor showed her resolve and showed her leadership by deciding to so-called split up LNI. That was a recommendation that the report said should be done down the line, but the mayor was determined and resolved and provided the leadership to do that right off the bat. So again, give us time. Give us time, and we'll hopefully we can get it all addressed and move on to take LNI to a higher level.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Last question, Councilman Rulandau.
Question and a comment. Quick comment.
Comment.
I think if I recall, there used to be a fund in LNI that would help pay for those necessary repairs to rental properties, and you'd bill the landlord and they'd have to pay you back. That was removed during the recession around 2008, 2009, so it's something to look into. And then the question is, how does LNI respond to its complaints, the inspection complaints? Is it just an order of when it comes, or are they in certain districts? I think my question before wasn't based on, I need a foundation first to understand that.
They come in through 311, and then they go into the Eclipse system. So they're populated by inspectors' census tract. So each inspector has a census tract throughout the city. So each inspector might have, I just use round numbers, I'll use 10. If each has 10, all the inspections go into that inspector, for those inspections that go into that inspector's work, things to do list, right? So then that inspector then figures out what they're going to do. There's a mapping piece in there that, so they go out and say they're not going to go from one end of their district, their district to the other. They make it make sense. So obviously, if something's like a huge priority, like, a house was collapsing, that would be something a little different. But they basically map out their day, and that's how they do it based on, now, there are certain service level agreements they have to reach too. So you wouldn't just like put something off for like 50 days. You couldn't do it. It will start to alert you that this is what you need to do. So it comes from 311 into Eclipse, and then the inspectors. That's what they do. They kind of plan their work out.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any other questions and comments from members of this committee? Hearing none. I want to thank you, Basil. I want to thank you, Bridget, for your testimony today. We definitely look forward to working with you. And at this moment, the chair recognizes Councilmember Isaiah Thomas for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Council President. I move that the Committee of the Whole stand in recess until Wednesday, April 10th at 10 a.m.
It has been moved and properly seconded that the public hearing and meeting on the bills and resolutions before the committee today stand in recess until Wednesday, April the 10th, 2024 at 10 a.m. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, and we are adjourned. See everybody tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp.